Good morning out there, everybody. Happy sunshine to you. Sun's not really shining yet this morning, but we're about to get started here in about 4 minutes for TV and radio for Saturday Sports Countdown. Been doing this for 20 years and counting. Getting up on Saturday morning and talking sports for 2 hours. So we haven't missed many Saturdays, just a handful probably. So we're glad that you joined us out there, and going to be with you till 9 o'clock on TV and radio. So always try to get the stream started a little bit here on Facebook and YouTube. So we're glad that you joined us.
Luke will be with us this morning.
That's right.
Get a little bit of different take than what Brett and I have given you for, I guess, only 3 or 4 days this week.
Right.
No, we went 4 days this week. We only took 1 day off. So
right.
Enjoying doing that morning show with everybody. If you got suggestions, you've got things you'd like to see us talk about, please send our way. The beauty of a podcast is not so scripted. You do the television side, you've got about 10 minutes to give a take. You can be right in the middle of something, and the next thing you know, you got to kick it over to the TV side for 3.5 minutes worth of commercials, and then you come back and you have it sometimes, and sometimes you've kind of lost the luster on the deal. So enjoying both. I've always really enjoyed the TV side. Can't thank that group enough. WOTM, Lake Broadcasting, WAXC, for carrying our programming for a very long time. But the new podcast element we're throwing in there, hopefully is finding a lot of new people on YouTube. Subscribers say that that's the case. We're just getting started. So pass it along. If you enjoy what we're doing and what we're talking about, pass it along. If you don't, that's fine too. Comment away. I said it yesterday. It'd be an impossibility for me to let you know how little at this point in time in my life, it bothers me when somebody disagrees. I get disagreement in Dadeville, Alabama, from the people I work with.
Hourly.
Yeah, minute by the minute.
Tough skin.
Yeah. Did get good news yesterday. We'll be closing on a new building hopefully next Friday.
Okay.
In Auburn. So
that's awesome.
It's going to be an interesting month, to say the least.
Adding more stuff.
Add more to it. And I think the business will close in the next 2 weeks. This will be 2 new buildings in Auburn and a new business over in Auburn.
Great opportunities.
It's growth. Yeah, it's growth.
Kyle said he needs one of those hats ASAP. I got you, Kyle.
They're all with Brett.
We're gonna
I got them away from me down here. Brett Pritchard has them. If he hoards them all away,
no need to hoard them. No need to hoard them. I don't need 50 hats. So we're gonna be getting those out to everybody. All right, we're about 30 seconds out, folks. So we'll get started here in just a second.
Usually, a first hour of our programming, high school sports. Been a lot more college lately. We'll try to run back down the high school alley at some point just to try to mix it up, especially on our Sports Blitz programming. So hang in there. Had a lot of all-state teams announced, Brett, for both volleyball and football. There's Luke.
All right, we got about 30 seconds, guys. We'll be ready to go.
You're right on time, Luke. Did you get your Starbucks this morning?
No, I had to make my own.
How about? I can't believe it. Lord help. First world problems.
First world Mountain Brook problems.
No Starbucks, no chicken biscuit. Isn't that right, Luke?
Chicken minis.
Chicken minis. That's what Luke does.
All right, here we go.
I do like chicken minis.
15 seconds. We'll just have them Uber dashed or whatever you call it now. So door dashed. All right, here we go. Good morning, everybody, and welcome into the Sports Blitz Saturday Sports Countdown presented by JR Sports Bar and Grill and Sunshine Heating and Air. Glad that you joined us here on this Saturday morning. And again, a lot to talk about here in the next couple of hours. Obviously, college heavy as the college football playoffs are now in the semifinal round. We'll have a lot to take on that. And or a lot to give on that, our takes on that. So you can comment away on YouTube and Facebook. We always enjoy that. Good to see both of you this morning. I mean, it's obvious that we'll start, like Randy said, we normally talk about high school in the first hour, and we will talk maybe a little bit this morning here and there. There were some all-star games that have been played. We might go down that rabbit hole, but college football is front and center, and that's what we've been talking about a long time, at least over the last couple of months, the way this thing is structured. And we'll just start, guys. Up until this point, college football playoff analysis for both of you. All the teams that got the automatic bye, and if you want to look at conference champions, if you want to group all that in there together, they all went they were 0-5. And we wanted to know if how this bye week would work. Would it help teams? Would it hurt teams? Also heard another point yesterday. What good does it do to get a bye when you don't get a home playoff game? I mean, if you're going to go play in a neutral site, what was the benefit of getting a bye? I mean, the team in the first round is the one that benefited of getting a home game. So there's a lot of things that are iffy, and I guess you want to say screwed up about the college football playoff that we're learning about as we go along. So I'll start with you, Randy, let you give your take. We'll work around the room.
Well, the first thought I had, and I'll kick it down to Luke with this, is watching Arizona State. I thought it was about to be a runaway game in the early going, and Luke's son there working the media side for Arizona State. So Luke went over to the ball game, and next thing you know, Arizona State's kind of bulled their way back into that thing, and got a great running back that very physical, that made plays all over the field, whether it be throwing the ball, catching the ball, and running the ball. And Arizona State did what they've done pretty much a majority of the year this year and got back in the ball game. And the reason that I bring that up is my expectation was very low for Arizona State and anyone outside of the SEC coming into this thing, except for, say, Ohio State. And I've been kind of bullish on Penn State for a majority of the year, just the way they play defense. And I think Franklin's one of the best coaches in college football. But my takeaway now is, first off, if you go up north and play and you're a Southern team, it's going to be difficult. And, you know, my Northern friends that I've talked to this year have asked for that, and we're very much looking forward to getting some of our SEC and Southern teams up north to have to play in some grueling conditions. And none of those seem to work out for the SEC. But even on neutral site fields, the Notre Dames of the world, the Penn States of the world, that Alabama and Georgia have been beating their brains in for the last 15 years, anytime they match up with someone like Michigan State and Notre Dame, or just keep going down the list of games that have gotten away from teams outside of the SEC. That's not the case anymore. I don't know if it's the transfer portal. I don't know if it's NIL that's closing the gap. I don't know what it is. All I know is you have to state facts. And the facts have been that Alabama and Georgia have carried the SEC for 15 years. And we look really strong because of how strong they've been in championship environments. But the rest of us have been mediocre for that entire stretch, outside of a year or two there. But now it feels like Alabama's coming back to the fray, and Georgia offensively was not very good this year. They had moments where they couldn't do anything. Quarterback play, even when they go to Stockton, not very good the other night. But, you know, even with their starter, the majority of the year, they struggled offensively. So I thought both of those teams coming back to the fray is more the storyline than anything that's going on, because if you add them back in the mix playing the way that they have been, we'd be a totally different show this morning talking about how strong the SEC is, and just totally disassociating ourselves with how Auburn and other teams in the SEC are playing, Luke.
Well, I think several things can be true. I think that, number one, the SEC did not perform well, and I think it is true the SEC might be down a little. I've seen Dave Portnoy from Barstool say things like, the SEC is dead. Give me a break. Come on, dude. I mean, that is so lazy and shock jock. And he's brilliant. That's why he's made $1 gazillion doing what he's doing. I mean, every pizza he takes is, you know, like this huge deal and then really not all pizzas are going to be awesome. It's okay. We all understand that. You know, that's the way he operates, and it's great. It works for him. But the SEC may be a little bit down this year. But this national narrative from Nicole Auerbach and all these other folks that I've been listening to, well, maybe Indiana did deserve it. Maybe SMU did. Maybe blah, blah, blah. First of all, I think you could also say the seeding was so bad and so stupid in this new playoff that we've got to change that immediately. It's just dumb. And do you think that what if Tennessee had gotten to play at home? What if they had gotten the 8 seed versus Ohio State getting the 9 seed? I'd be willing to bet Tennessee would have at least given them a much better fight, if not win it. What if Tennessee had gotten to play Indiana instead of having to travel to Columbus? Georgia, everybody just thinks, oh, here's Notre Dame now. They're back on the national scene. Georgia's back to earth. Well, are we just glossing over that Georgia had to play with their backup quarterback? We're just not going to even talk about that? Like it's not a big deal? It's a big deal. And Texas is still in it. Yeah, I know they just got in the SEC, but they're in the SEC now. Oregon just got in the Big Ten, and nobody was saying boo about that when they got the number 1 seed. I just think this tournament had a lot of flaws, a lot of flaws. I have no problem saying the SEC is down a little bit too. There's no doubt about that. As far as Alabama and Georgia carrying it, that is very true, with maybe the glaring exception of LSU 2019 and maybe I guess if you just want to go the last 10 years or something, that's really the only one. I don't even know if another SEC team's even made the playoffs outside of those 3. Am I wrong? I mean, Texas made it last year as a Big 12 member. But I think that I've also seen some of the talk of Brandon Walker, who's also with Barstool, I think, said something like, well, is it any coincidence that all these other teams have come up now that NIL is legal and the SEC has been caught up to? I'm like, what do you think, Ohio State? I mean, if you believe everybody was paying, and we all kind of do to an extent, but if you believe that was so prevalent, you don't think Ohio State was doing it? You just think they're just good and everything's pure and just over there? Just quit talking about that.
Well,
it's so dumb to me.
There's a national bias against the SEC because they have been so dominant for so long. So everybody's been waiting for a crack in the armor. And, we have been a massively strong conference. We have the best players in the country, top to bottom. This is where everybody wants to play. And now that things have kind of evened out this year and with the new 12-team playoff, all of those guys that you just mentioned, the national pundits, are having their take and they're getting their shot. They're getting
What's
their
evened
shot
out,
in.
Brett? What's evened out is this. Think about it. It's not that Notre Dame, and I'm using Notre Dame as an example because this is another point. Everybody wants to find one thing that's changed everything. And really, it's a whole bunch of stuff. Notre Dame has like 3 or 4 guys that probably would have gone pro and tested the waters as 3rd, 4th, 5th round picks. But instead, they come back because they are eligible to get NIL, and they probably make a tiny bit more, if not a lot more, than what they would have made had they gone pro. So now they get some experience back. It's not that they bought new guys. It's that they get to keep some of their guys. That's what helped Notre Dame the most. And then somebody else said, well, it's the transfer portal changing everything. Well, I mean, for Ohio State, I guess, they got a new quarterback, they got a new running back, they got a new center, they got Caleb Downs, they got some big players, but they also went out and did get probably the best freshman in the country in Jeremiah Smith. He's unreal. For all the talk we had about Ryan Williams, Jeremiah Smith's better. That's hard for me to say, but it's true. He's sick. Notre Dame, they had a transfer quarterback too. Everybody says, well, Notre Dame, Marcus Freeman didn't really want to tamper with the portal very much. I love Marcus Freeman, but when you go get a quarterback, you're deep in the portal because that's the only position that matters. That's it. That's the number one position in all sports.
Well, let's go ahead and go to break. And for TV and radio, we'll keep this discussion going. I've got a good point. Justin just brought this up, but I said it yesterday on our podcast in the morning. So I'll get your take on that, guys, as well. So up against our first break for TV and radio. Stay tuned. More Saturday Sports Countdown right after this. Like the crazy thing is that the one positive thing, I guess, about adding teams is that look at Ohio State. They're probably playing the best of anybody right now. They wouldn't even made it in last year.
Okay. That also that proves both points. See, I did hear another national guy, an Ohio State guy actually said, he said the thing we all have to realize is the teams that won it in the BCS and the 4-team playoff era need to get more credit than the teams that make it in the 12-team era. Because, see, those 4-team and BCS era teams, they couldn't slip up.
Well, and I agree with that. And I hear that point. And I think we all said it back then. It's almost impossible to be perfect. Well, I mean, humans, it's tough enough every day in the real world. You're asking a team to be absolutely perfect to have a shot to get in to play for a championship. Teams can get better. I think Randy said it yesterday. I think although Michigan's record doesn't show it, they got better as a team. I mean, they got better as a program, and maybe that 13-10 loss, although it looked bad at the time for Ohio State, I mean, should that have prevented them from playing for a national championship? They only lost 2 games.
Well, my answer is yes. But I mean, y'all's answer is no, and I get it.
Right.
Well, yeah, but Luke, I think where those that watch what you have said over the last month would kick back at you and say that your answer is yes, but it was also, why is Alabama not getting in? Why did we not get in? I get it. I get the 12 team and some, but that's the reason people are throwing darts at you.
I can't
is that
I can't qualify. I can't say, nobody on here can say I never said this. I said Alabama would be an undeserving team to get in. I want us to be the least undeserving team. That's all I wanted. I was like, if you're going to have 12, you're going to have a bunch of undeserving teams, which we clearly did. And I was hoping.
But the least undeserving when you lose to Vandy is like and when you get the hell beat out of you by Oklahoma on the road, that's not a good team. 24-3 a few weeks ago, less than a month ago, you go over there and score 3 points.
Again,
that's the look. I tried to back you, but the more that we talk as the SEC about the way the NCAA, this thing couldn't have played out better for them than it has this year. It couldn't have. I mean, this is a perfect setup because the SEC's down, and the teams that came in that everybody complained about are winning for the most part. I mean, some of them have lost, but more of them have won that I didn't see winning. Now you've got probably the 4 best teams left that I thought going in. Now Alabama could have been one of those if they would have gotten in, sure.
But Randy,
all right, 20 seconds. 20 seconds.
Okay, really quickly. You say, oh, you got hammered by Vanderbilt. Yeah, we did. A Vanderbilt team that, by the way, went on and beat Georgia Tech and looked good and won 7 games. That would have been Indiana's 3rd best win.
Yeah,
so, I mean, you can spin that a million ways.
5 seconds. 5 seconds. Welcome back, everyone, to the Sports Blitz Saturday Sports Countdown presented by JR Sports Bar and Grill and Sunshine Heating and Air. And look, we kept this discussion going on social media, so we want to bring this back to the fold. Look, I brought this up. Randy, you gave your take. Luke, you're giving your take on it. I think I agree, first of all, with Luke at the beginning of the show saying I think this playoff system had some flaws. I did bring up that Ohio State would not be in this thing if you were to go back to last year. And look, and here's been my problem with the 4-team playoff and back when you had a BCS. Man, it is so hard. You're going to play a game sometimes where it doesn't work out for you at the end. And I'm not an Ohio State fan by any stretch, but they lost on the road to Oregon, who's been number 1 pretty much all year. At the very end, because Will Howard slid a little bit late, they were in field goal range. They were about to kick a field goal. So they lost on the road. They didn't lose again until they played their rival at home. Now, I know Ryan Day's caught hell about it, and he can't beat Michigan, whatever. I understand that. But they lost, and it was ugly. And at that time, everybody said, ooh, Ohio State, man, they're tailing off. Well, they've been the best team in the playoff. I mean, and they have been. And if you look at it from a perspective of how we operate in human society out here, we're asking a football program with 85-plus players and a staff to be perfect for 13 straight weeks.
No, you're not. No, you're not. You're not, Brett.
You were in the old system.
No, you weren't.
You were in the old system.
Justin points it out right here. Saban only went undefeated twice. You can lose a game. You could lose a game. And look, that's fine. I mean, Alabama lost a game last year and made the playoffs. Now, people say Florida State should have gotten in, but we all know Florida State had a quarterback problem, and it was tremendous. It wasn't like they just lost their back.
Well, who would have been the 14 playoff this year if we were basing it on that?
I got to think it would have been Georgia, who won the SEC. They had 2 losses, by the way.
Okay, I mean, yeah, here we go. I mean,
right
out of the
what
gate.
I'm saying, that's my point to your thing. You said you had to be perfect. They lost 2 games.
But in the old era, I mean,
They
the
would have been
BCS, I know, old BCS era.
Oh, they would have
I mean,
been out.
That's right. So, and then we advanced to 4 teams. I think what I'm saying is we're slowly saying and giving a case for why we have upped it to 12 teams.
But no, and I'm telling you that we also found out the first 4 games were non-competitive. And we've also found out that the second round games, we're not sure if a bye is good for anybody or not. Now, it may all be coincidental. It may be coincidental. So, I mean, you do need a bigger sample size. But I'm with you. Why would I want to buy? I don't want to buy. If you're going to do this, let's let the bye teams also get a home game. That's the best way to do it if you're going to do it this way. But I think we found out the first round games were non-competitive. Everybody had a hissy fit that Alabama or South Carolina or Ole Miss even thought about getting in the playoffs with 3 losses. Well, we let Clemson in, but they won the ACC. But the ACC sucks. We're seeing that in the bowl system. Even though I don't agree with using that all the time, ACC's getting hammered in every bowl game, and they got hammered in the playoffs. So what I'm saying is it has all these flaws. I just don't need anybody telling me, see how much better this is? No, this has as many flaws, if not more, than what we had before. And I've hated even in the basketball terminology when people say, yeah, but they're hot now. See, that we wouldn't have this magical run. And I'm like, because see, college football is the only sport where all year long you had to be on your toes. Basketball, you don't have to be on your toes.
Well, what's the excuse for Oregon being number 1 and so dominant all year and got their doors blown? I mean, you just don't know.
That may be the bye week thing. That may be the bye week thing. Maybe. I'm not saying it's an excuse.
Right.
And frankly, they only beat Ohio State by, 1 or 2 points in the first time? So they're pretty close as it was. And I would argue that because, see, Oregon's had to deal with the pressure. Now they get in, they're the only undefeated team in this thing. They've got this heavy crown on their head like, okay, now you got to go all the way through it undefeated. Ohio State's already relieved the valve of pressure of losing a game. They can go in there sort of willy-nilly. And they went in there and kicked Oregon's ass. I give them credit. I do. But what I'm saying is, why is it so important? Glenn Toller says, don't lose late. Why is losing late better than losing early? I've never understood that. If we want the regular season to matter, quit telling me the regular season matters the same when you say things like don't lose late.
Randy, your take during the break.
First off, the NCAA couldn't have gone any better than it has, was my take during the break. The second take I had, because I was one of the main ones out there, really touting what Luke was saying and the SEC was saying about our teams deserve to be in outside of some others if strength of schedule is going to be important. And we need to know what is considered important by the committee. But my other point was, the more that you talk, the more that your fight for Alabama and others to get in, get head scratching as this thing plays out. Because there's other teams outside of the SEC that are equal to us, Luke. And the problem I have with Alabama, the further I get, Glenn's point is valid when you go on the road to Oklahoma and score 3 points. Less than a month ago.
I couldn't agree more.
Very
Randy,
valid.
I said it over and over again.
Now, if you go over there
and
lose 35-34 or something on a late field goal, that's different. When you go over there and score 3 points, and then you see what Alabama did in the bowl game. I mean, that wasn't. Now they beat Auburn between, which were pitiful. That doesn't have. I mean, that carries no weight to beat Auburn at this point. But to go on the road and beat Oklahoma, and to lose to Oklahoma the way that Alabama did, you can't argue it as hard as everyone in that crimson color argued. You and everyone else did for a long time. Luke.
But Randy, all we've said is you're going to let an undeserving team in. If you're asking me again for the
who's
future,
deserving?
Nobody. I mean, about 4 teams, and we let 12 in. That's my point.
But we're not going to go back the opposite direction.
I agree.
So that's over. So it's kind of like this NIL talk that Brett and I have all the time, every day. It's like, I get it, Brett. We can sit on here for another 2 hours every day if you choose to. But until some leadership steps up that's going to change the way that this is administered, then we're just wasting time talking about it. And you And others are wasting time talking about it, not liking the 12-team playoff. It's not going backwards.
I've accepted the 12-team playoff, Randy. You're asking me, and you keep saying the term fighting. I wasn't fighting for Alabama to get in. I said I would have put Alabama and I said this. I mean, I said it on this. I said it on this show a bunch. I would have put South Carolina, Ole Miss, or Alabama, or Miami, or BYU. BYU looked good in the bowl game. If we're going to give somebody credit for a meaningless bowl game, let's give them credit. I would have put any of them over some of those, over SMU or Clemson, or, I mean, clearly to me. And I clearly wouldn't have put Boise as a bye team. I mean, I just think that's so dumb. And that's where I'm like, okay, y'all want me to accept the 12-team playoff. I accept it. Can we not have dumb, moronic rules like let Boise get a bye?
I think the biggest flaw of the whole system as we get ready to go to our next break on TV and radio is the seeding. I mean, I'll be honest with you. Oregon deserved a better seed. I guess not better seed. They were the number 1 seed, but they had to play the winner of Ohio State and Tennessee. And I mean,
better path.
A better path. That's right. And then some of these other teams. But again, somebody's going to have that complaint every year, I think. And now people want more teams. And I'm not for that. But as soon as we get to 12, we ain't even gotten the 12-team playoff finished, and everybody's wanting 4 more. I'm with both of you on a couple of points. I think you both make valid points that, yeah, you can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't say some of these teams need to be in when your team wasn't as good and you were trying to argue for that. But then you also look at it, it's not a coincidence that some of these things worked out the way they did. And I know you can look at Indiana. Okay, Indiana, maybe that loss wasn't as bad as everybody thought, but then Notre Dame moved on to play a team without a starting quarterback in Georgia. I mean, and they only had 90 yards passing, but they still won the football game. You can break all this stuff down 6 ways to Sunday, and you can needle it all together. But I think there's some good elements. I definitely think there's some bad elements, and it needs to be reevaluated. And I think the point that both of y'all brought up a few weeks ago about the schedule is very valid. We need to know what the committee wants. Do we need to play a tougher schedule or not? You know, we all need to know how to play by the rules. And if you give us the rules, then we don't have anything to complain about at the end. All right, up against the break. Stay tuned. More to come right after this.
Problems, the rules change.
They
every
do.
Damn year.
They change every year.
I mean,
and
the NIL rules.
Look, we all had all the national crybabies were having a fit that we don't have enough teams in to get inclusion. Now we include the Indianas who played. I mean, I can't say this.
A trash schedule. I mean, they did.
They played. No, the only team they played was Ohio State. Ohio State buoyed their schedule to like 66th. And if without Ohio State, it's like in the hundreds. And Ohio State beat their brains in. And then we're supposed to just say, well, you know, but they one was in front of them. They can't control it. They can control it. They can control the Florida Internationals and the Charlottes and the what other Western directional piece of crap school they had. And they can control that. Now, see, that's where I go back to another problem with this. The Oregon thing, Brett's exactly right. They got screwed because if we all are going to say, hey, look, Ohio State seeded 8, but they can beat anybody. Like they got as much talent as anybody. Their roster costs as much as anybody. And I'm not mad at them. They spent the money, go get it. But why do we make them a seed, the 8 seed?
Well, just don't make the conference champions an automatic bye.
They got to stop that. And there's got to be.
It'll end up at 16 teams. It's going to be 16 teams where everybody there is no buys.
I keep hearing Danny Cannell say, well, you know, there are difference of schedules, power schedules in the NFL, but the difference is like that. Because in the NFL, like, seriously, even the worst team can jump up and beat the best team. We've seen it happen a lot in the NFL because they've all got rosters. They got 53-man rosters. They all got a salary cap. The difference is usually the power quarterback. Now, in the college football world, your schedule can be a gap as big. I can't even show it on the screen. So that's where you've got to commit because there are only 32 teams in the NFL. Right. And they do try to play like your division typically plays this other division and everybody sort of round robins that thing. And so they try to make it as fair as they can. It can't be perfect, but it can be more fair. And in college football, we don't do that. We're just like, well, Brett said it last time. Indiana's scheduled to make a bowl game and they screwed around and made the playoffs. And that's kind of BS. Like they should have been penalized for that. more so than they were. That's my point. Justin says you can't have hypotheticals. Okay, I'm not talking about hypotheticals. I'm trying to give you a formula. Forget hypotheticals. I'm trying to give you a formula.
For everything you're saying, though, Arizona State is the outsider that I would have said would have gotten their doors blown off, and they didn't. So as long as there's that example to throw out there, I think they have an argument.
But yeah, Arizona State did win their conference. They did get, by the way, they got a 4 seed, which they probably shouldn't have gotten. They probably shouldn't have gotten that. Their best non-con game
20
was at
seconds.
Mississippi State.
20 seconds.
Y'all think it goes to 16 teams?
I do. Absolutely, I do.
I think I think it goes to 24 because
that's a whole nother story.
It's so dumb now. I mean, we screwed it up. I tried to say it. I tried to save all of college football myself.
Here we go. Welcome back, everyone, to the Crimson Tide Sports Network. Saturday Sports Countdown presented by JR Sports Bar and Grill and Sunshine Heating and Air. Look, it's clear as the nose on our faces that we've, and I say we, because I guess we group everybody into this, all the people that love college football, and I think the three of us love that sport as much as anybody. And we're all exhausted from this. I mean, we have taken the best sport on earth and figured out a way to screw it up. And every time we try to go fix it, it gets worse. And it's because we're operating with no rules or guidelines. And this is a prime example. If anybody wants to use this as a thesis or some type of research project in school, don't operate your organization or your life like the NCAA operates intercollegiate athletics. You have to have laws and regulations in society to be able to live. You can't just go out here free willy-nilly and do whatever the hell you want to do.
Brent, you want to talk about society? Let me give you, again, I'm not trying to get too heavy. I got 2 examples. Choose the lesser or choose the one you like the most. Number one, if you're a teenager, if you're 18 years old and you have a little budding pimple and you go to pop that sucker, well, sometimes pimples aren't all created equal. That thing may turn red and black and nasty and get all swollen and infected. And now you go to school and you're like, all I had was a small pimple, and now it looks like my whole face is melting off. But if you just go, hey, I'm a pretty good looking dude or gal, I just need to put a little thing on it and let it go away, and accept that we have blemishes and not try to fix everything. The other side of it is, when you say, oh, we're going to have, again, I'm not trying to get too political here, but you say, okay, we're going to have a society and we're going to have a police force. Now, we understand that police are human too, and occasionally they may do something that is also illegal or go over the top. Instead of defunding the entire police force, maybe we should say, let's scale it back a little bit and understand we also have to deal with some of these issues as they come individually instead of looking at the whole broad thing. We've turned this thing into, college football wise, oh, if one team gets screwed, it's the worst thing ever, and we have to fix that next year. There's no doubt about it. It's got to be. We got to change it. Conference champion needs to get in. No, they need a bye. No doubt. No ifs, ands, and buts. Well, now this year the 4-team playoff had Arizona State at 4 and Boise State at 3, and we all look at this now and go, "This is so dumb. How did we do this?" Yet there were so many people screaming for this exact thing, and I'm just telling you, I'm worried that we're going to keep fixing it until we ruin it. That's my point. And we keep fixing it. We keep doing this stuff. We're not going to get to even know what a 12-team playoff does before we expand it again, because we can't wait. Now, fine. That's what everybody wants. You want to have a big playoff and not let the regular season matter? That's fine. And you say, well, the regular season matters more than ever. I'll tell you what. Michigan beating Ohio State should have meant Ohio State doesn't get in. Now, again, that's Luke talking. And that should have been like a Michigan milestone moment, like something they can all. If Ohio State wins the national championship, you think they give 2 rips if Michigan beat them or not? I wouldn't. I would. Auburn can beat Alabama every year for the next 100 years if we're in the national championship to win the national championship as a result. I'll do that. I'll make that trade all day, every day. And y'all can sit around and brag on it, and we'll sit around and polish rings. I'll take that trade.
and I'll say this, and I don't want to sound like the goody two shoe carrying the banner for colleges, but the reason we're at this point is because all we're talking about is the money factor. And I know it's a big business, but we have forgotten that these players had a scholarship offer to come play at a school to get an education, and this thing did grow and it got bigger. And the money came in and the TV rights deal. And I know it's changed everything, but we don't even talk about that other anymore. We don't talk about academic eligibility. I don't remember the last time anybody outside of the three of us have even said those words. We don't talk about what it means to go play for that school. I don't think any of these players care anymore. I think some of them do, because some of the ones that are down, the kid that ran into the referee on the sideline for the Georgia game and Notre Dame game, he's probably over there. He loves being at Georgia. He probably needs to be in a frat somewhere instead of standing on the sideline playing for Georgia. But we have turned this thing. Let's all quit trying to act like this is college football. Okay, I think that's another problem. We're all in our mind saying, oh, that AU or that number on the side of the helmet, oh, that's the school we pull for. Nobody cares anymore, man. These players in 6 to 9 months can be playing for somebody else. There's no loyalty there. Randy has said it all week about coaches not having loyalty. Nobody cares. It's the next best deal. It's the way society is. We're all capitalists. We encourage that. But it goes back to not having rules and regulations to police this stuff. I'm all for capitalism. I'm all for people getting paid what they deserve. But you just can't go out there and every 6 months demand more money. Employees can't go into Robinson Iron and Lee Apparel every 6 months and demand more money. There won't be a business eventually if you have to up the pay every time somebody comes and thinks they're worth more. Got to figure it out, man, or we're going to keep going down this road.
I said it in the previous segment. Until you get leadership that decides the 8 or 10 things that the Power Four feels like they want and need, and put that person in place and give him the reins to go out there and fight and not lose every single court battle that comes up, it's not going to be fixed. Talking heads like us aren't going to fix this, because the next thing that comes up, they're going to concede to. It's what's happened so far.
So it's the judicial system. It's the judicial system, really.
If you can't win court battles, then yeah, and that's been the case.
So what I think is going to happen, and again, this is the irony of it all. People who usually, the little guy who screams the most and demands all this change, usually doesn't understand, oh, it could get worse for me. So think about this. If you're Purdue, and now Purdue's in the Power Four, or Vanderbilt, but let's take Memphis or somebody like that, Boise. They're screaming, we need more opportunities. If you're Ohio State, if you're Michigan, if you're Alabama, if you're LSU, if you're Georgia, whatever, you're probably going, okay, why should you get the same opportunity as us when people want to watch us? Nobody's tuning in to Purdue, Virginia Tech. I don't mean that as a shot at Purdue or Virginia Tech. I just mean it the way it is. Ratings bear that out. So if you're the bigger schools, you might say, okay, y'all want to be more like the NFL and just have heartless playoff selection. Like, you go here and there's no exception. You go here and there's no exception. Fine, we're going to do like the NFL and have 32 teams. How about that? Now, all the teams that were crying for all the inclusion, they're out of the picture altogether. So what I'm saying is, be careful what you yell for. And because this isn't going to be like the NCAA basketball tournament. It's impossible. We're already asking these kids to play 17 games. That's as many as an NFL regular season game. And I'm just telling you, I don't think that's going to work. I think what's going to happen is the big boys will eventually begin to break away, either little by little or the way things are going very, very quickly. Rules are coming down the hill so fast now. Did you see the NCAA said they're going to talk about just making it where you have 5 years of eligibility, no questions asked, and we're just going to do that. Look, I'm for that, as long as we do something like, say, here's the deal. Everybody's got 5 years of eligibility. End of discussion. No red shirts, no injury, medical hardships, no ninth-year seniors like we've seen, none of that crap. You got 5 years to play as much football or basketball or volleyball as you want to and get as paid as much as you want to. At the end of that 5th year, whether you've had a hangnail or a shattered ankle bone, you're out.
Let's take a break. Let's take a break on that point and keep this going when we come back. Stay tuned. More to come right after this. Well, I think you just hit the nail on the head. We got so many caveats: medical red shirt, gray shirt, COVID year. Everybody's confused at where everybody is, and now all of a sudden you got a guy that's played 9 years in college. Just dummy it down to 5. Simplify as much as you possibly can. And quit putting – it's like the state of Alabama Constitution. You can't fit that thing in this room I'm in. It's got so many amendments to it.
Well, it's the reason I said get a leader. Don't come up with a list of 50 things you want that leader to go fight for. Make it 8 or 10
and let them go.
And let them go. And let them go make those happen.
Taking it to a game standpoint, how about, Notre Dame runs out all the people out there for the punt team, so Kirby does the same. And then there's some like small caveat asterisks in the rule book where if the guy never gets set, then it's never truly a live ball. So Notre Dame runs everybody off and back, and the offense comes back on, and Kirby's either – I can't remember if he had to use a timeout. He did something that screwed things up. And Kirby's like, in our league, you can't do that. We don't think. We were told you can't do that. And maybe he's right.
Well, what about the kick in the Arizona State game? The field goal.
Go to some of the games, Brett, when we come back.
I will.
How about define what? How about just take targeting and instant replay out?
That was a horrible.
If you look
call.
at that targeting call and say that's not targeting, then I'm done with it. I'm done. I'm over it.
We had a good talk on that. We can carry over here, Brett.
Yeah, that sounds good. I mean, should that field goal have counted? I've read where it should have.
Arizona State?
All right, so Arizona State, the ball, they blocked it. Remember right before half?
Yeah.
The ball bounced off the turf and went over the crossbar. According to
I swear I didn't even notice
according to the rule, that's a made field goal.
Wow.
Because nobody else touched it. It's still a live ball, even just because you block it doesn't mean the play's dead. Because the Leon Lett deal, remember in the NFL?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Where he ran down there for some stupid reason and tried to grab the ball. If you just let it come to a point where it dies on the field, it's over. Well, the ball, apparently, I'd have to go back and look at it, bounced over the crossbar. Well, that's supposed to be 3 points.
And, y'all know Justin's probably still watching. You know how much I love him. But he said, he's like, well, if you're not undefeated, you can't complain about not getting in the playoffs or whatever. I'm like, well, then what do we have a gazillion sports shows for? That's what they're going to do. Nobody's going to get on a sports show and just say, well, what a well-fought contest. That was equally super fair. No, everybody's going to come and complain, including me, including y'all, including all of us. And again, for the 1,000th time, I wasn't fighting tooth and nail for Alabama to get in, because if it were my system, Alabama wouldn't have been close. So I can't be a hypocrite. I'm not going to say Alabama deserved a shot. I'm going to say I thought my team was the most deserving of the least deserving teams. That's what I'm thinking. My team sucked the least of the sucky teams that were available. I think.
And where I agree with you is that
we got 10 seconds.
We've got to know what out of conference schedule.
We just need to know what's going on. All right, here we go. Here we go. Welcome back, everyone, to the Saturday Sports Countdown presented by JR Sports Bar and Grill and Sunshine Heating and Air. A couple segments here in the first hour. Get your comments in. We got a bunch of comments coming through, and we're trying to get through those as we talk. And again, talking about the college football playoff, I had a feeling it was going to eat up a majority of what we talked about. We'll get to basketball. By the way, SEC basketball starts today. We're going to talk a lot about that in the second hour. But while we're sitting here trying to drill for oil in a rock quarry, trying to figure out how to fix the problems of college football that we can't fix on this show or any show. We can bring them to light, and we can talk about them because that's what we do. And that's what you do out there watching and commenting. So let's talk about some of these games. Let's go back and look. Yeah, go ahead.
I want to say one thing really quickly.
Go ahead.
We said it off air that And Justin saying again, I'm saying as a team and fan, ultimately you can't complain about not being in versus teams who haven't lost. Nobody's saying an undefeated team should be left out over a 3-loss team or anything like that. But I'm saying when you have 3-loss teams and 2-loss teams, and you have teams that played a difficult schedule and teams that didn't, that's where it's going to come up. And here's the other side of that. Again, as a guy who does a podcast now, and I've learned this very quickly. The first thing I thought of when Alabama lost that Michigan game wasn't anymore, dang, we suck. It was, my views are about to go way up. Hey, if Alabama would win that game, my podcast would have gotten 20,000 views. It doubled that because people want to hear us complain. So when we get on here and complain, people like to hear it. When y'all complain on Auburn Blitz, when you lose, I promise you.
Well, shit, everybody's numb to us. I mean, at some point when you've lost so much, that planes out too. So
okay, but now, okay, fair. But my point is, when you were first losing, like when you had a loss, I'm trying to think of a loss this year that was really bad. When y'all came on the next day and Brett's fired up and there's literal smoke coming out of his ears and lava out of his nose, I promise you more people were watching. So people say, I hate it when people complain. No, you don't. You watch more.
There's no doubt there's truth to that for sure. We've said it.
Let me spin it over in a conversation because I want to get Luke's take on this, Brett, and I want to carry it down the football alley just a second. Defenses, in every generation, it feels like defenses at some point catch up with what the offenses are doing, and you'll see, points start going down or offenses change. Luke, do you get that feel at all this year? Because I think defenses are ruling the day. The Penn States and the Ohio States and some other teams out there, Michigan against Alabama, holding Alabama to 13 points. I know that this is not the same Alabama offense that we've seen in the past, but it does feel like that a championship game may not be the Clemson and Alabama championship game of many moons ago that was 45-42 or whatever the hell that thing ended up being. A bunch to a bunch, that this one may be a lot more low scoring, and your feel on what's going on in college football when it comes to defenses matching offenses.
I don't think it's as broad sweeping as that. I think it's a bad year for college football quarterbacks. Dillon Gabriel's one of our best, and he's fine. He's not great. Oklahoma pushed him out the door for Jackson Arnold. They pushed him out the door. Will Howard is the quarterback at Ohio State. He's fine. But let me tell you something. You put Tua Tagovailoa on this Ohio State team, throw into that wide receiving crew, nobody's touched him. Out of Michigan, nobody. Oregon, nobody. Trevor Lawrence on that team, nobody's coming close to him. It's a bad year for quarterbacks. Jalen Milroe is the number 3 quarterback on Mel Kiper's big board. That's all I need to know. And I've been a Milroe staunch supporter, but I have seen the light. He's fine, and he can run like a deer. Otherwise, it is 50-50. I'm talking about on a screen pass, on a deep ball, running sideways, anything. And I like him as a human being. I do. And I'm just calling it like I see it. He cannot do a lot of things that normal quarterbacks can do.
All right, there's a lot we want to get to here in the next hour and 15 minutes. Want to recap a few of these games real quick. Want to talk to you, Luke, about the status of Alabama in your mind, where you think this team goes. I know an assistant coach got fired yesterday on the defensive side of the football. I want to talk about Auburn, Randy, kind of where we look going into the spring. I think there's a lot of teams in the SEC that have a lot of questions that normally haven't had questions, namely Alabama and Georgia. Okay, Alabama's got some questions they've got answered, namely at quarterback. Even though a lot of people had grown, disheartened with Jalen Milroe for the reasons you just brought up, Luke. Who's going to be Alabama's starting quarterback next year? That's one point we'll talk about. The teams Randy and I talked about on the podcast yesterday, the Missouris, LSU, some of these teams that really started playing well and have been playing well that were at the lower, not LSU, but Missouri, maybe Arkansas, some of these teams that have been at the bottom of the league aren't necessarily at the bottom of the league anymore. South Carolina, Florida. I mean, who's got DJ Lagway coming back this year and who I think Billy Napier maybe did the most phenomenal job I've seen in a long time, where 3 games into the season, everybody was ready to cut his head off. And by the end of the year, Florida was playing as good as anybody out there. and he discovered that DJ Lagway probably should have started at the beginning of the year, but they've got him coming back, and we all know how important quarterback play is. So I guess we'll start there. Just your analysis, and start Randy and go down to Luke, your analysis on this league right now in the SEC.
Well, you and I talked about it yesterday, and it's unfortunate as an Auburn fan that we're not listed in one of those 5 teams that you brought up. So my takeaway right now is I wish Auburn were in the same boat that South Carolina's in and moving in the right direction, not just selling ourselves that the recruiting is going to lead us to the right direction.
Right.
So it's the show me state that you keep saying on all of the shows at this point. That's where I am with Auburn. That's my spin there. But, tip your hat to Napier and South Carolina and Missouri. Look at Missouri. What's Missouri's record over
22-6 in their last 28 games.
Would we take that?
Are you kidding?
And some of those wins have been like the one against Auburn this year that you can say, well, Auburn should have won. Well, we would have, should have, could have done a lot of things over the last 15 years that we didn't do. So I'm hopeful that we're one of those teams that you bring up next year, but it feels like I go into every year saying the same thing. That's my takeaway with football right now as an Auburn fan is I'm hopeful that next year is when we turn over a new leaf, but I've still got my questions.
Luke, before you give your take, I want to go ahead and go to commercial break because we're at the break. Come back. I want your analysis on that. And then I want you to talk about Alabama moving into next year because DeBoer, after 1 year, I just hear mixed feelings from everybody, from Alabama fans. So I'd like to hear your take on that. Stay tuned. More to come here on the Saturday Sports Countdown right after this.
What do Alabama fans think of him, Luke?
Yeah.
Everybody was really mad initially after the Michigan game. And that's, again, that's something I said last week or whenever we did the last thing, and I've been saying, Alabama's got a lot more to lose in this bowl game because Michigan had some opt-outs.
Right.
Jalen Milroe's legacy, the 10-game win streak thing, all this stuff was on the line, and Alabama went out there and laid an egg. Now, again, I please don't think I'm making excuses. I'm just calling it like I see it. That it was funny. Alabama gets the ball first, and the clouds shoot down rain like Noah was coming, and I don't know if that's how that Bible story works, but whatever. And so initially Alabama's got 3 turnovers immediately, and then everything parts just like regular Tampa weather, and it's beautiful the rest of the time. Michigan scored a bunch right there at the beginning, and then they didn't really score anything else. The defense did a really nice job, but yeah, I mean
what do y'all want to be on offense, Luke?
Huh?
What in the world do y'all want to be?
We want to be a team without Jalen Milroe. Okay. I feel like most fans right now have come to the line of thinking we were held hostage a little bit by Milroe. Not necessarily his fault, not necessarily DeBoer's fault, not necessarily. It was one of those situations where, I mean, hindsight's 50-50, as Pat Dye said, but in hindsight, I would have loved to have seen a change somewhere. I called for it during the Oklahoma game. Everybody said I was a racist. And all I could say was, I think we got to do something to create a spark. You don't get a spark by changing the left guard. You just don't. You get a spark by changing the quarterback. And, he played. Yeah, he beat Auburn. He had 3 rushing touchdowns. Everything's great, right? But he couldn't pass for a touchdown when you got Ryan Williams on the team. Now, Ryan Williams should have caught one, but he didn't. Against Oklahoma, couldn't pass for any of them anywhere. Against LSU, he 4 rushing touchdowns. We don't pass for one. The only passing touchdown we had against Michigan was to Robbie Oots. I mean, there's something wrong with that.
Yeah, I couldn't believe that stat. It's crazy. So,
but I think that everybody's willing to say, okay, Jimmy and I came to the conclusion that you need to look at this like the same way you lose a quarterback when we lost Saban. If you lose your starting quarterback right before the beginning of the season and you've got a backup, at first you're like, okay, well, hopefully he can do as much because everybody loves the backup quarterback. Well, then you don't win quite as much, but you win okay. You're like, all right, now next year is your team. This year you were thrown in the fire, but next year is your team. And as Jimmy said, we ain't giving you any more of this. You still got Saban's player stuff. I mean, Auburn fans went this with Hugh Freeze. Hugh Freeze was like, well, I still got to change the roster. BS. You better get
No.
that portal
No.
full.
No.
Amen to that.
All right, 15 seconds. Yeah, no doubt about that. Welcome back, everyone, to the Saturday Sports Countdown presented by JR Sports Bar and Grill and Sunshine Heating and Air. Last segment here. In the first hour, we were talking about the status of the SEC and kind of where we sit going in to 2025. Luke, your thoughts on the state of Alabama's program? Again, probably more questions going into a season next year and an off season for Alabama than they've had in the last 20 years. And you got a new coach that just won 9 games but lost 4. You got a team that had a love-hate relationship with their quarterback. Now they're going to be trying to figure out, is Ty Simpson the guy? Is Keelan Russell the guy? Who's the guy? And we all know that's important. Lord knows, us as Auburn fans, no quarterback is the most important position. If you can't get that right, it really doesn't matter what everything else it does on the field, especially offensively. So your take Alabama-wise heading into 25.
Well, first of all, big picture with the SEC. I mean, I guess Gunnar Stockton's going to be the Georgia guy. They have an easy non-con next year. They're in conference is tough, but most of their tough games are at home. Texas, Alabama's at home. Ole Miss is at home. All the teams that they had to play on the road this past year that they complained about, well, they get them at home next year. Bama, as you said, has got a lot of questions. LSU, here's one that I thought they might fall way back to earth next year. Well, now they bring back who I think will be unquestionably the number 1 quarterback in the league next year in Nussmeier. And by the way, they open up at the other Death Valley in Clemson, who also will welcome Cade Klubnik back, which has turned into maybe the game of the day, which would be a fabulous day of college football that first week. Ole Miss, easy non-conference, but who's going to be there? We know they're going to hit the portal extremely hard. They already have. But who's going to be their guy? I mean, They'll still be dangerous. Then you got a cluster of teams like Missouri and A&M and Auburn and South Carolina and Florida and Vanderbilt. Of that bunch, Vandy's got the best quarterback. I don't think any of us can make an argument otherwise. They got Pavia coming back. I mean, would y'all take Pavia on Auburn right now over Jackson Arnold?
Yes.
Okay. Lenoris Sellers is coming back for South Kakalaki, but as good as he's sort of got a Jalen Milroe vibe going on, doesn't he? I mean, he can be awesome, and then the next minute you don't know what he's doing.
He does. He kind of did in that bowl game, and he did several games this year. I mean, he could look like a superstar and then a goat sometimes. So.
And that was probably the least meaningless of the meaningless bowl games. Again, if we're going to keep calling them meaningless, let's not call them all meaningless. But that one actually got under everybody's skin with Brett Bielema and Shane Beamer and all that.
Right.
Mizzou, they ought to be okay. Their non-con is pretty easy, and their conference schedule, again, very manageable. It's just a flip-flop of this year.
They'll probably win 8 games again.
Yeah. A&M, they got Kevin Concepcion from the transfer portal. They got another receiver who I can't remember, who's apparently very good. They got some dudes in the portal, but we don't really know what exactly they're going to be again. I mean, same problem. They fell off at the end of the year this year, and then they let a Southern Cal team that's not very good come back and beat them when they had a 24-7 lead. So I think questions are there for everybody. And so I don't know, but as far as Bama goes, the non-con's pretty difficult. I mean, no, FSU went 2-10 this year. Can't escape that. But they're going to be better next year because they have no choice. And then Alabama welcomes in Wisconsin. That's 2 Power 5 teams on your schedule. A lot of teams don't do that. They have to go to Auburn, obviously. They get LSU at home. They get Tennessee at home. They get Oklahoma at home. Got to go to Georgia. I mean, I think Alabama's could I see Alabama making the playoffs? Yeah. Could I see them getting left out again? Yeah. I don't know what to think. I usually go in every season with my chest puffed out.
I want you to look into the crystal ball. Is Kalen DeBoer going to be there after next year at Alabama?
Oh, yeah. I think so.
He will be there after next year.
Oh, yeah. I don't think that's even a shocking revelation.
If he loses 4 games next year.
I still think he'll be there because it costs so much to get rid of him.
Well, what's his buyout? It's
a bunch right now.
61 million,
isn't it? 66, I thought.
Something like that.
It's 60 plus.
Yep.
I know it's a crazy number. And by the way, did Alabama, these contracts are wild to me, Luke. I mean, was Alabama that sold on Kalen DeBoer that you give him that type of buyout?
Well, I think
that's what
the alternative was he re-signed with Washington.
Yeah. So you
I mean,
were
and-
sold on him. I mean, you have to be sold on somebody that you give that type.
You know,
of
and I
value.
was
That's
ready-
wild to me.
And I was ready to crown Dan Lanning the next guy. And then you get what you get in the Rose Bowl with him, man. I was like, Oregon. I know it's one game. I get it, but this is Oregon's problem. It's just like Justin's comment about Ole Miss, and he's right. Until Lane Kiffin's won 10+ games and all that, but then he lays an egg and he's on the outside complaining why his team doesn't get in. It's the Ole Miss hasn't put a trophy in their case in God knows when, and they've got some really good seasons. It kind of feels like Mark Richt. You know, Georgia had some really good seasons. They couldn't ever get over the hump. They did at least win a couple conference championships for Mark Richt there. I mean, they can't even get to the SEC championship game, and we know this was one of the best Ole Miss teams that they've had in a long time. So
yeah, it is funny that, I mean, for all the people that have killed Alabama for losing to Oklahoma and Vandy, and they should be killed for it. I'm not saying they shouldn't.
but don't
Ole
lose
Miss
to Kentucky at home.
Ole Miss has the worst loss of anybody in the SEC this year, if you ask me.
Period. It was horrible. And it kept them out. And then they still had a chance to get in. And I know Florida was playing better, but they gave Jackson Dart 14 opportunities in the fourth quarter not to throw a pick, and he did it every time. So they throw a pick, get the ball right back, put him right back out to throw another pick. They had their opportunity to win that game. Florida was okay. They should have went down there and beat them if they were a playoff contender and wanted to be in. So this conference is crazy, and I think the parity's greater than it's ever been. Randy and I talk ad nauseum every day about Auburn, so we won't talk a lot about that. But yep.
Somebody, Glenn Toller, I think, said, well, see, NIL has leveled the playing field. Y'all know who the Final Four is, right? Notre Dame, Penn State, Texas, and Ohio State. Probably four of the top 8 blue bloods in all of college football. Has it been leveled? I mean,
I think the SEC's been leveled.
Maybe a little bit, sure.
And I think the main reason the SEC's been leveled, and you could say that that's the reason that Nick Saban got out of it, was the NIL, which leveled it there. But Nick Saban leaving leveled it to all of us. I mean, my perception of Alabama is nowhere near what it was.
Oh, I don't blame you.
And Georgia, I still have a strong perception of them if they get the quarterback position right. I think they were the class of the league this year. Their quarterback play just wasn't up to par where we've seen it in the past. So I think the biggest point that I've tried to throw out there in the first hour is Alabama and Georgia have carried the flag for the SEC for a long time, and if they come back to earth, then it levels everything.
Well, the SEC is more like an NFL conference. Like their leveling is
right.
Like, okay, instead of being like this, it's like this. Mm-hmm. Whereas these other conferences are like a big gap here, because you know what, the SEC still has the most NFL draft picks.
Sure,
they still got the most people. Alabama got, I think, 8 or 10 guys in the Pro Bowl. I mean, what I'm saying is the SEC still carries the weight, and the SEC still has the best conference, and that's why I get so mad at people for latching on to, well, South Carolina, Alabama, and Ole Miss had 3 losses. They'd have no complaints. They're playing in the American Football Conference. They're not playing in the SEC. They're not playing the same schedule as Boise. Boise's playing a bunch of teams that usually you go snow skiing this time of year.
All right, let's get to our top of the hour break. Again, we have another hour coming up here on the Saturday Sports Countdown. Stay tuned. More to come right after this.
Who's Alabama play today?
Missouri.
Oklahoma. Y'all got Missouri.
Yeah.
Oklahoma. They any good? I haven't paid
Missouri's,
attention.
I mean,
Oklahoma's 13-0.
Oklahoma's undefeated.
Wow. In Tuscaloosa or there?
It's in Tuscaloosa.
Man, that'd be a good one.
But then it's Tuscaloosa, and then Jimmy and I said this, we play South Carolina next. They are technically, I guess, the worst team in the conference. And they still have 10 wins. They're still top 75 in the net.
The first 5 games for Auburn, nobody has more than 3 losses.
Nobody in the conference has 3 losses outside of South Carolina.
That's it.
Nobody.
That's it. It's brutal.
How's Alabama playing, Luke?
They're playing okay. I went to the game the other night against South Dakota State, and they sort of toyed with their food a little bit. It's like they turn it on and turn it off, and they need more of a killer instinct. And that's where Auburn has a huge advantage, because they have experience. they also, because they got beat in the first round last year, it probably helps him out a little bit. Just a constant reminder. And I
How's
think
Sears playing, Luke?
Huh?
How is
He's
Sears
playing better. He's not playing like he was last year.
Why?
But I mean, I think he's having a hard time adjusting to, I got more options this year.
Yeah.
And he's like, am I the man? Am I not the man?
Yeah, I see that. Because last year he had to create.
You think
he had great shooters around.
You think he missed the boat not going on to the NBA last year?
No, because there was nothing he could do and he got paid. I mean, it ain't getting any better. I mean, he probably got a better package from Alabama to get going, bro. And so next year he'll probably take a bit of a pay cut, like the old joke used to say.
I mean, that's it. It's probably
like Janai.
Like Janai. I mean, Janai Broome, he ain't getting any taller. And he ain't going to get double-doubles against NBA players. He's just not. Now, he will in the SEC, and he's awesome in college. Some people, it's okay. That's another thing. We always kill people. We didn't do crap in the pros. Can we just say somebody was a good college player?
Yeah, like the Kentucky kid a couple of years ago.
You don't always have to go on to
player of the year in that Kentucky, and we never hear about him in the pros. Post player.
You talking about the guy in Swab? What is his name?
Wild last name.
Suave or whatever.
Rico Suave played for Kentucky.
No, you know which one I'm talking about. He had Sheboy.
Sheboy. Oh, Oscar Sheboy. Yes,
I was close. Suave.
Is he even in the NBA?
That was much better than
I don't hear squat out of Oscar.
Yeah.
Sheboy. But that's going to get a rebound.
Is he in the pros?
That's what I'm asking. I mean,
that tells you
great college player.
Tells you all you need to know right there.
I mean, and conversely, I can see why somebody would love Herb Jones more than they love Brandon Miller, even though Brandon Miller is clearly a better player overall. Brandon Miller was only there 1 year. Herb Jones came one year, broke wrist, had hangnails and everything else, was trying to shoot free throws. But he ain't even close to the same player.
No. Oh, we got about 15 seconds. Oh, hangnail Herb. Oh, here we go. Welcome back, everyone, to hour number 2 of the Saturday Sports Countdown. Get your comments in on YouTube and Facebook. Subscribe to our YouTube channel out there. We appreciate all of you that are joining us that way. We appreciate all of our TV viewers out there as well, and everybody tuning us in on radio as well. So thank you for joining us for 20-plus years here on the Saturday Sports Countdown. And we'll shift over and talk about some SEC basketball. And again,
we never did talk about the playoff games.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what, let's go back because we've got a full hour. Let's talk about the playoff games before we dive into SEC basketball. We'll start with the Penn State game. Maybe Penn State's a little bit better than we all thought. Okay. I mean, they have notoriously under James Franklin not been able to win the big game for all the grief that Ryan Day catches. James Franklin has been the same guy. And we looked at their path and we said, look, maybe Penn State has the easiest path to get there. And here they are in the semifinals. So just your thoughts on Penn State and where they are. I mean, again, they did to Boise what we all thought. I told Randy on the podcast, I thought the game that would have the chance to be the biggest blowout would be the Boise-Penn State game because Boise is so one-dimensional with Ashton Jeanty. And it ended up playing out. I thought they fought hard, but again, Penn State's talent, the lines of scrimmage won out. And now here Penn State sits in the semifinal. What's your thoughts on that, guys?
One of the best defensive teams in the country. Really good on the defensive front. So physically they match up with anyone. When you watch them play, to me, it feels like watching an NFL team play that doesn't have a premier quarterback. You watch a really good, solid NFL team play that's got a middle of the pack to slightly above middle of the pack quarterback, and they've got to do everything well to win. And Franklin doesn't get as much credit as he deserves to be one of the best college coaches because Penn State was dead in the water. When all of the Paterno and Sandusky and all of that storyline hit, and you have to remember that wasn't that long ago, for Franklin to right that ship and have them a consistent winner. Now, are they winning championships like Alabama and Georgia consistently? No. But they're a 10-plus win team just about year in and year out, aren't they? I'd have to go back and look at their record, but it feels like
they are.
So just a really good program, and I don't think we give Franklin the credit that he deserves for what he's done, not only at Vandy but moving on to Penn State.
Yeah, I think he's a pretty good coach. I also think, again, another flaw in the system where Oregon had a much harder path, even though Oregon was the only team that earned to be in the playoffs, if you ask me. I mean, honestly, they're the only team that you could say, see, that was one of the old things where, like, if we were doing it the old ways, this is one of the years where it would have worked out. Where, like, everybody said, Oregon's national championship. They proved it over the long
Who would have been the team in the BCS if it obviously Oregon would have clearly had one spot? Who would have been the other team?
Well, Georgia was the 2, right?
I
So
think
I guess it would have been Georgia.
So it would have been Oregon and Georgia.
No,
and,
I'd be willing to bet it might. I don't know. I don't know about BCS because there's a formula, like there's a computer.
well, I think they would have had enough points to get it.
It might have been Notre Dame, and again, setting up to play in a 12-team format versus playing just one team. I think Oregon blasts Notre Dame. That's me, and maybe I know hypotheticals, whatever. But yeah, I think I think Oregon beats Notre Dame because I think you got to throw for more than 90 yards against them. And again, everybody talking about how will Notre Dame surpass Georgia. I mean, Georgia was out there with a backup trying to make something happen right before the half, and they screwed up. They probably should have run the ball and taken it 6-3 at the half. And instead, they give up a fumble, and then they kick it, and nobody ever returns kickoffs anymore, and they return it all the way. Next thing you know, Georgia's playing catch-up with a backup. It's different.
It was a perfect storm.
Yeah, it's a perfect storm. So, anyway, I think Penn State's fine, but they got a draw that only Penn State could get. I mean, they play SMU, who a lot of people thought, I'm not sure if they should be there or not. Now, it turns out if they had played Bama or South Carolina or Ole Miss, they probably beat them too. I wholeheartedly admit it. And then they go on and they get to play Boise, which, okay, if you want to give them, was Boise's reward a bye week? I mean, I don't think so. I mean, what would be the best thing to do, and what you can't do in basketball because they're logistically it's too much of a problem. But I think what you can do in football is say, after every round, we're reseeding this thing, or we're going to let the higher seed play the lowest seed available, whatever, something like that. And that would have been the thing to do, because if you ask me, and again, I'm in a perfect system, Penn State would have to beat Ohio State before they got to the national championship game, because I think that's the one thing that's the hurdle they can't get over. That's their bugaboo. And so before they get to the national championship game, you have to prove to me you can beat them. You've already had a shot this year. You couldn't beat them at home. And frankly, you had it on the 1 yard line twice and couldn't get it in. And Ohio State sort of played like very conservatively that game. Jeremiah Smith wasn't the factor he is now. So I'm not sure that Penn State could hang with Ohio State. I still think Ohio State would wax them if they play again. So I don't want to see them in a natty. I would rather see Penn State have to play Ohio State like when they played Boise and say, okay, if you get by Ohio State now, you've earned it. But if you don't, they shouldn't get a freebie into the natty, which is kind of what they have. And they have as much of a freebie as you can have.
All right, so you move on, and that Texas-Arizona State game, Texas looked like they were going to run away with it. And then Arizona State fought back, and Scatterbo really brought them back, and we saw something that never happens. A player on the losing team win the MVP. And, look, he's got a little bit of an air about him. He's got a little bit of arrogance about him, but I think that's what makes him who he is. And, look, it turned out to be the best game of the day and the best game so far of the college football playoff, going into 2 overtimes. And, if you add the controversy of that field goal in the first half with Arizona State, whether it should have counted or not after the ball bounced over the bar, maybe you don't even go to overtime. Maybe they win it in regulation. Bottom line is, thought Arizona State proved that they deserved to be there. They could have wilted and just went away after they got down the way they did to Texas, but they fought back, and they made this a game where they had a chance to win it.
How was the crowd, Luke? I know you were there.
Terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so funny. Like, somebody responded to me on Twitter. I have no dog in the fight. I mean, I guess I do. My son goes to Arizona State. So, but I'm also an SEC homer, as y'all know. I'm a card carrying. SEC is the best guy. I have no problem saying that. But I went to that game and I took a video right before kickoff. I
Yeah,
just
I saw it.
scanned the whole stadium, and the upper deck was empty. The lower deck was fine. There were clusters of Arizona State, clusters of Texas. I bought a suite seat off of a Game Time app for about $100.
Well,
I got to
Luke, let's look at it from the standpoint of Texas. That's the second time they've been to Atlanta in a few weeks. They got a chance to go back in another few weeks to play for national champ. How many trips you taking to the Mercedes Dome as a Texas fan? In Arizona State, God love them, they traveling all the way across the country to go to a quarterfinal game. I mean, again, that's why you set up these things. People try to go, I'm going to take a chance. I remember you saying this, Luke. I'm going to take a chance and see if Alabama makes it to the next round, and I'll go to that game, or I'm not going to go to the SEC championship game in hopes they go to the national championship game. So let's go ahead and take a break here, keep this conversation rolling into the next segment. Stay tuned. More to come right after this. I mean, how many times are you going to go as a Texas fan to the Mercedes Dome? I mean,
I told y'all Nick Saban was breaking Alabama fans. We couldn't keep going every year. I mean, it's tough. You go to the SEC title game, and you go to a playoff game, and then you go to another playoff game. It's a lot of money. We don't have infinite supplies of money. Now, Texas kind of does, but at the same time, they don't have infinite supplies of time. So, I mean, you can't just say, well, because when you go to a football game, y'all know how it is. Even when you're from Elliott City to Auburn, it's a day. It's a whole day.
Yeah, absolutely it is.
There's no it's like you got to get in and that's just going 40 minutes. I mean, if you're Texas, I don't care if you do have your own jet, you got everything else. You got to get dressed. You got to get the wife dressed. You got to go out and buy some new stuff. You got to take time for that. You got to find a babysitter, or you got to bring all them damn sea urchins with you. And then you got to take them all on the jet, and you get to go over there, and you get to buy a bunch of tickets, buy some overpriced food. By the way, I was a little miffed that when I bought my suite ticket, I just assumed it meant the food was there. Like, we ain't doing food, because we didn't know how many people were going to be in here. And I was like, well, that's great. And she said, you can just go on back out to the thing and sit like everybody else. And so I did. But the Texas fans, going back to that targeting thing, I don't know if you're going to talk about it more live.
That's what I was going to get to.
All right, we'll talk about that live. But you can't every other weekend. Or every weekend for 4 weekends, you're going to go somewhere and sometimes on a Thursday or on a Monday.
That's my point.
Unless you own the oil company, you ain't doing that.
True. Yeah, that's why the tickets, I think, $25 for some of those playoff games.
Man, the get in. I'm talking about all in price. Usually, your Ticketmaster's like, this ticket, y'all got to go this.
And they had somebody walking down the sidewalk, and the people out there, hey, y'all want to come into this game? We got a game going on in here. Can y'all?
There's a game going on, but usually on Ticketmaster, it's like you can get in to see, this Milli Vanilli tribute band for $2. And you're like, well, I'll go see, I'd watch anything for $2. Then you do it, and this goes, okay, now we got a Ticketmaster fee, rust proofing. We get
lip sync proofing,
state tax, county tax, city tax, where you at right now tax, some more taxi tax, and then okay, now it's $58. You're like, I'm not going to see Milli Vanilli tribute for $58.
I got a buddy that has a construction company, and he has a bunch of big, obviously construction vehicles and dump trucks and stuff. He said by the time he ends up paying all the tax and stuff, he wish he ain't even bought the thing. Yeah. He wish he didn't even have the daggum thing.
Yeah, that's right.
It's freaking ridiculous, man.
You know what that's like? It's like what we're talking about with you talking about the Constitution. Everybody has to get everybody has to get their little piece of the pie.
That's it.
We got to have all these taxes, and then everybody's like, I can't believe prices are so high. Y'all are taxing us at the yin yang. We done taxed
out.
We can't tax no more. I'm about to go throw some of this coffee in the river like we used to do with the Tea Party. And
then they tax the tax.
Y'all think if I go put my Starbucks cups in the Cahaba that somebody might start listening to us like they did with the Boston Tea Party?
Yeah, go try it and see what happens. Oh, here we go. Welcome back, everyone, to Saturday Sports Countdown presented by JR's Sports Bar and Grill and Sunshine Heating and Air. Let's get back to these playoff games, and we're going to slide over to college basketball. The call in the game, again, we've talked about this too. Again, not going to solve any problems on here, but we can complain. If that wasn't targeting, I don't know what targeting is anymore. And we all said it where we were watching the game. Everybody unanimously said, well, that's targeting. And then they go and look at it and review it, and they come back and say, what? Just do away with the rule, man. Just do away with it.
Brett, I was in the stadium, and a bunch of Texas fans, sort of bought the individual seats like me in the suite with me. And, but it was still about half empty. And live, I'm watching the game just live like everybody else. Live, I didn't think there was anything to see. But when they showed the replay and then said we're reviewing it for targeting, as soon as they put it up, all Texas fans went like this because they knew. They were like helmet to helmet,
absolutely,
forcible contact, all the characteristics. And then they come back and say no targeting, and they're fired up, and Arizona State fans are PO'd. And again, it's like there's we don't know what y'all want. We're not sure what you want us to do here. Like, because part of me is like, okay, that's really kind of a good tackle. I didn't think that was malicious. I don't think there was malicious intent. It's hard to understand what somebody's intent was.
I agree.
The way he was tackled, I was like,
right.
That's just a pretty good tackle in my day or 10 years ago. But now the way y'all do it, that seems to fit every criteria you need to be targeting. So why isn't nobody's come back and said why I didn't? It was clear as day to me. And I saw people on Twitter saying, well, that's not what I want the sport to be. I don't want it to be that either. So let's get rid of it. Let's also get rid of review, because here's the other thing. I'll say this for the millionth time. I'm so sick of review. I don't know what to do, because if you're going to review that and determine that wasn't targeting, please don't review anything else, because nobody knows. It's the same as just when I saw it live, and all you did was hurt Arizona State even more by crushing their momentum. Do you understand where I'm going?
No, it's 100%, Randy. Your thoughts on it?
I agree with both of you. I told you this the other day, Brett. I don't know how you coach tackling anymore.
Hard.
Because I think you pretty much have to take the headgear out of the game, and you've got to communicate that to everyone too, is that you can't go head first into the chest like any of us were taught 35 years ago. The perfect form tackling is my headgear, my head up, right in directly into your chest with my legs moving and pushing you backward. All of us were taught that way. I don't know that you can anymore, because he didn't launch.
He did not launch. No, he did not.
He didn't launch.
No.
And it was a perfect form tackle, but it was headgear to headgear.
So
what is the rule? The only way that
in a way, it was unavoidable, because he was there. And so he was just there with his helmet like this. And the other guy's helmet runs into him. But again, I've seen targeting called on plays far less severe than that. So, and it goes back to Randy talking about fighting for, a 3-loss Alabama or Ole Miss to get in over SMU. Okay, we're kind of picking nits here. So let's just get that part out of it. If it were my perfect world, Alabama wouldn't be in, Ole Miss wouldn't be in, and neither would SMU, because they clearly aren't one of the best teams that deserve it. That's my point, that this is so dumb to have this discussion about, well, was it targeting or not? Because the letter of the law, it seems like it was, but I also understand it's not forcible contact. So why don't we just take the whole thing out?
Again, it goes back to what we said in the first hour. You keep adding caveats to why something, instead of just saying, if it's crown of the helmet to the headgear, it's targeting, period. I'm sorry. I hate it that's, it was bad timing with the tackle, but if it's headgear to headgear, it's targeting.
Well, what if the wide receiver lowered his head though, Brett? I'm curious.
I'm saying the same thing. I don't know. I'm just saying, don't.
The only way you can coach it though, Brett, is to say you got to tackle with your shoulder.
Sure.
You got to have headgear across, tackling with your shoulder pads, take the headgear out of the tackle if you're going to call that.
What you're saying is exactly the whole point of the rule. That's what they're trying to say.
The rule to me is what the two of you are saying. Headgear to headgear is targeting 15 yards, you're out of the game. Period.
Hey, y'all know I'm not this much of a conspiracy theorist, because I always hate it when people do it in Alabama's direction, so I'm not going to be a hypocrite. But I did make the joke that I bet that official was looking at the screen, y'all, this is targeting. And then he said, I just got to check this text real quick. Greg, Texas has sent me $1 million in my Zelle account. That is not targeting. We all good here.
I'm telling you, man. Look, in this world with everything that goes on, it's hard not to be a conspiracy theorist.
Yeah.
We won't go down that rabbit hole. But to finish that up, Randy, I hear what you're saying. I think that's why they put the rule in. Is your explanation is they want you to lead with your pads and
Yes.
not with your headgear.
Headgear across.
And if it's headgear to headgear, the problem is the launching thing. They put the launch in there, and I've seen targeting call where somebody launched and hit somebody in the chest, and they called him targeting.
He didn't launch at all.
No, he did
We've
not.
seen him
He
hit him
didn't.
in the butt and they call it targeting. Brett, that it goes back to what you said at the beginning of the show, that we keep putting words in to make it easier. It makes it tougher.
It's overcomplicating it.
It's the old senator or congressman who said, when somebody said, well, what is pornography? He said, I don't know, but I know it when I see it.
That's it.
That's
That's
what
it.
That's what it should be. Targeting should be
Is
like
that what they're looking at under the little hood?
He said, I got to determine that this is target. Y'all got to give me another minute.
It's another definition of targeting.
This thing just got good.
And no wonder it takes so long for them to come up with a rule.
I don't know if it's targeted or not, but she just ordered a pizza. So let me see what happens. But look, but no, that's what the rule should say.
It should.
In targeting, in the rule book,
absolutely
it should say targeting. You know it when you see it.
I totally agree.
When I saw last week for Arizona State wasn't targeting. By the rule, it seemed clear to me it was. So that's what I'm saying. Like, you should leave it to the discretion of the official. Like, look, that really wasn't targeting. Okay.
I'm never going to be able to look at an official, go over to the screen and look at that little monitor again without thinking of this conversation. All right, a couple more minutes in this segment.
I don't know about a 15-yard penalty, but I see at least a yard. Oh, sorry.
I knew we had to kill it. It was going to get out of control. It's going to get to the edge right here. All right, Ohio State. We talked about this. We really need to go back into it. Ohio State obliterated Oregon. Oregon was the number one team. It is what it is. I think Ohio State showed after the first round they may have kind of awakened after that Michigan game and was playing the best, and I still think they're playing the best of anybody. And then the Sugar Bowl got postponed today because of the horrible tragedy that happened. We've all been on Bourbon Street a million times. All of us have. I'd be lying if I didn't say when you're in crowds like that something doesn't cross your mind. And I've stood exactly where a lot of those people have stood, just like y'all have. And it's crazy to think, man, some idiot did what they did. So that kind of took away the feel of that game, having to play that at 3:00 on the next day. So let's take a break right here, guys, and we'll come back and finish that discussion and then spend the last 30 minutes talking about basketball, Auburn and Alabama. Stay tuned. More to come here on the Saturday Sports Countdown.
You know, I've been on Bourbon Street with fraternity folks from SAE, with Kevin.
Oh, yeah.
Multiple times. One time I was on Bourbon Street, I got separated from my folk, from whoever I was with. I don't even remember what year. It was a long time ago. Of course, you meet some girl and, you know, everything's going fine. And we end up back. I mean, she's like, just come, we're going to this other place. And of course, I'm just following her like, you know, Pepe Le Pew follows that other skunk every time she comes around. and we just end up back at not an apartment, but like a place they had rented or something. And it was like 10 other dudes there that were just friends of her. They're all from New Jersey. I'll never forget that. And I mean, part of me even then was like, this is weird. Like, they could all jump me and take everything I had right now. But I didn't worry about it. You know, it's just like you didn't worry about that stuff back then.
Oh, no, I know.
You can't even walk down the street now.
You without your head on a swivel. And you better be.
Have you seen the video of the car? Like, as soon as it turned down the street, like, people were jumping out of the way. I mean, it's crazy, man. It's so.
And then the chief of police comes out and goes, "Oh, I didn't know we had all those barriers."
He said, "Bollards,
barriers had all those barriers on the to put up."
You know, that chief
How does the chief of police not know that you have barriers to put on the sidewalk?
Well, first of all, she's 115 years old, and again, I'm all for a female chief of police. I'm all for an older chief of police. I'm against a chief of police that doesn't know we need barriers during New Year's Eve at New Orleans.
But she said it on the press conference. That's the
Oh,
problem.
I know.
She goes, yeah. Where the guy said, where'd those come from? She said, we had them in storage. I didn't know it. I would say that's what you don't say after a mass casualty event. But anyway, regardless, hey, Russ.
You might as well have gotten up there and said, what's everybody doing here? Something happened?
Yeah.
You know?
Pretty close to that. I don't think Russ would mind me sharing this because he texted it to me back in the studio. You know, he played for Mississippi State, and he said the reason he has to walk with a cane now is his head. He was taught to hit the numbers, you know, tackling and blocking all those years. He says what the neurosurgeon told him. That constant over and over and over and over and over.
Terrible for you.
Terrible. And so,
all right. And listen, let him text you. I'm curious about this. I've always said this. People always talk about how they wouldn't let their son play football because they can't walk or need a cane or whatever when they're older. But I'm curious, like, if I were good enough, if I thought I could play football, like, and I love football and whatever, and I could play college football and get a scholarship and even get paid now, or maybe even go into the pros, would you sacrifice knowing, okay, you're going to be limping later on. You're going to be limping.
Yeah.
For to be able to do that. My answer is I would. It's easy for me to say because I didn't have to do it. I'm curious, would he give up playing football at all, knowing where he is now, or does he look back and go, it was
well, I'll add
my life.
He sent some more stuff. We got to come back from break, and I'll read it to you guys here in just a minute. All right, welcome back, everyone, to the Saturday Sports Countdown presented by JR Sports Bar and Grill and Sunshine Heating and Air. 30 minutes left in the show today. Just wrapping up your thoughts on the Sugar Bowl. Again, Georgia was hoping to make it back and play for another national championship. And Carson Beck went out in that SEC championship game. Again, we can go on and on about the SEC championship game now. You know, you lost your starting quarterback in a game that really don't mean two hoots other than you won the conference. And I know I'm not diminishing that. I think it's huge to win SEC championships, but it doesn't mean as much as it used to. And
would Georgia like to have had, let's say, even Tennessee spot now? Like, say, okay, we're just going to sit this out because they probably would have gotten the 5 seed, 5 or 6 seed. They would have been in Tennessee and Penn State slot or something. Like, they get the 6 seed, and then they get a home game, which they make a bunch of money, and then they go, to the Fiesta Bowl or something and play Boise or whatever. Shoot, if I were them, I would have much rather had that deal.
I think my takeaway with Georgia is what I told you this week, Brett. Whatever you think you need to spend on the quarterback room,
that's what you got to do.
In the NIL era, just double it. Because I think that's how important the quarterback play is right now. You take a program like Auburn, man. I don't know what we need to spend on that room. Jackson Arnold gets $2.5 million. I don't know what we paid Deuce Knight, but it's not enough because without
them, you don't have a chance.
Without them, you don't have a chance. So my takeaway with Georgia was what Luke said earlier in the show today. The quarterback play was just down this year across the board, especially in the SEC, which means that if you did get it right this year, like if Cam Ward would have been at Auburn or somewhere else, then you probably could have cured a lot of L's with quarterback play being down the way that it was. So just get out of your mind that you can't believe you would spend $2.5 million on Jackson Arnold or whoever you think is the right piece. You better spend it.
It makes us mad. It makes us mad, but it is what it is.
Let's do this in summation, and then we'll get to basketball. First round buys. Teams that get first round buys, they don't get a home playoff game. Why do you want to buy? And none of them won a game. So you analyze that, and then you look at this situation here. I mean, they're flaws that need to be looked at and corrected. I don't mind. Everything's imperfect. All we've talked about this morning's why things aren't in a we don't live in a perfect world. But make them, if you're going to do some things, actually work to make the system better. Don't make it worse. So you got to look at conference championship games. They're not relevant anymore, okay? And you got to look at these buys. It's not fair for somebody like Oregon to be the number 1 seed to have to play the winner of Ohio State and Tennessee, and you look down at Penn State's path, and they have to beat SMU and Boise to get to the semifinal. It's not right, period.
I'm going to vomit like Cam Scatterboo when I say this. But now that we've gone to 12, and now that we've seen the flaws in the system, the only thing we can do is go to 16. That just dawned on me, because you're not going backwards, and
You're not going backwards.
We do want to make it where, conference championships and stuff like that do matter, but we also don't want to penalize teams for doing well by not getting a home game and then losing some momentum coming into the playoffs. So all you can do is go to 16, which is what I hated all along. But 12 was the worst thing they could. Now that we've seen 12 was the worst thing they could do.
I understand the strategy behind the bye and the reasoning behind that. It didn't work out right because of the way they seeded. And the conference, they didn't really get a benefit from this. And so it showed that we have data now. They're 0-5. The conference champions and the automatic bids into the first round, or the bye in the first round, were 0-5.
And this may go away, but I've also always said I think momentum is much more prevalent. It's prevalent in every sport. It's a big deal in every sport. It's more prevalent in college because that the kids are younger and more impressionable, and for the longest time they weren't getting paid. In the pros, it's a business. You show up, you handle your business. But now that they are getting paid, it may not be as big a deal. But my point was that if you're Oregon and you have all this momentum coming into the playoffs, and then you get an extra couple of weeks off, meanwhile Ohio State gets beaten, and then they get to fine-tune some problems against a Tennessee team that wasn't in their class, and then they get to go to the Rose Bowl, which they've been to 1,000,000 times, by the way. It's not like this new venue. Then they've been able to fine-tune some things on the actual field, whereas Oregon was sort of like, they go to Christmas and they hang out and they get bored, and then they go to the Rose Bowl and get their doors beat off.
Notre Dame will take on Penn State in the Orange Bowl. Notre Dame's a 2-point favorite in that game on January the 9th. Again, that's a Thursday. And then on Friday, Ohio State will take on Texas in the Cotton Bowl. So will be, in essence, a home game for Texas. Ohio State's a 6-point favorite in those games. Y'all's two thoughts on who wins those two games?
Great matchups is my thought. I mean, Penn State and Notre Dame playing in one semi. That's two of the best programs in college football history. And on the opposite side, you bring Ohio State, that probably is favored by what you've seen with Texas, but you bring them down to Texas. And give Texas that benefit, probably evens it out more than that line is showing. So,
how about Quinn Ewers' element? He was at Ohio State. Yeah, he was a Texas legacy. Everybody thought he was going to Texas. He goes to Ohio State, gets the first $1 million deal. Everybody thinks this is nuts. Shoot, he wouldn't show up to a appearance event for $1 million now. People are talking about he's going to get $6 million next year.
Do you think is he playing that good for y'all? I mean, I just don't. I don't mean
this is a shot at y'all, but Jackson Arnold ain't worth 2.5 either. Agreed. If Jackson Arnold's worth 2.5, Quinn's worth 6. I'll say that. But I don't think either one of them's worth that. Right? But you're worth what somebody's going to pay you.
That's it.
I just said you better be willing to pay double whatever's in your mind for that quarterback room to get it right. You don't have a choice.
I hate it. Y'all hate it. But it's what the monster we've created. And again, I'll say for the 1,000th time, if we weren't doing this show and we each didn't have a podcast, and even though we all went to our respective schools and we followed them through hell and high water through the years, it's hard not to have some of the love fall away. You know what I mean?
Well, we have. We all have. We've lost it. And a lot of, people that we talk to on a daily basis feel the exact – I don't see anybody – I haven't seen a tweet or whatever you want to call it now, an X comment, or anybody on a show say they love the structure of college football. I haven't seen that. Have y'all seen anybody come out and say, man, this is outstanding. I love every minute of this. This is great.
And Justin says they're worth it if somebody will pay it. I said that, number one. Number two, is that good for the sport, though? I just don't think it is. I don't think it is. But I think long term, this is going to cost us all. I mean, I love the NFL as much as everybody, but I love it because you can bet on it and because of fantasy football. I don't love it because I'm a big Chiefs fan.
I was going to say, everybody that watches NFL probably is because they're betting on it. or they have a fantasy league.
And I would watch
That's
Alabama play Minnesota in a submarine in the old days. You know what I mean?
That's it. Well, and it goes back to and we're not going to get into this because we got to get to break and we got to get to basketball, but the bowl games are totally irrelevant. I mean, that game last night, I didn't even know the daggum thing was on. The Duke's Mayo. I mean, I didn't even know Minnesota and Virginia Tech were even playing. And obviously none of their fan bases did either. Because if you looked at the stadium, there was nobody there. Because it doesn't mean anything. You're going to pack, like you just said about the cost of going to these games. Are you going to pack up if you're Ole Miss fans, even though you had 10-win season, and go down to the Tax Slayer Gator Bowl?
No. Get Duke's Mayo Bowl and get a bunch of dang
And then get a Mayo. What's what I'm saying? Are you going to go to either one of those games when it don't mean anything? I mean, bowl trips used to be fun. I went to a bunch of them.
Shoot, yeah.
I don't care anything about it anymore. Not going to spend the money to do it.
Brett,
So.
I went to Orlando to see the Jay Barker team in '94 and Sherman Williams.
All right. Ohio State.
Play Ohio State.
Ohio State.
When they had, I think they had Chris Carter. They had Keith Byers. They didn't have Keith Byers. They had somebody like Eddie George. That's who it was.
Yep.
They had dudes all over the place. I mean, it was just a blast.
It just doesn't mean anything anymore. All right, let's get to break. Stay tuned. A couple more segments right after this. Yeah.
The other solution people have thrown out there, and I've heard this for a while. I was an advocate for it, but like saying instead of bowl games, just move whatever the bowl game would be to the first next year. Well, your team is so deadgum fundamentally different. Number one, that'd be great. We've done a long time. Secondly, well, then what are we as fans going to do? I mean, without at least with a bowl game, I do have it on in the background, sort of like in case something happens.
Right,
I mean, I ain't watching it, but I'm like, I got it on like it's part of the, gray noise in the background. You know what I mean?
That's exactly right. I mean, I remember going to the Citrus Bowl and watching Auburn play Penn State. We beat them 13-9. We had Ronnie Brown and Carnell, and they had that great running back.
Was it Blair Thomas?
No,
Larry Johnson.
Larry Johnson, LJ. I mean, had a great vacation. Went down there for 4 or 5 days, and I mean, I wouldn't even think about it. I mean, I'd much rather go somewhere else than to go do that because that don't mean anything anymore. So,
I'm telling you, basketball on this show, and I understand it, I get it, is like Lindsey Buckingham from What's Up With That. I think I said that last week. Then we're gonna get to you next week.
Guess what? That just tells you again. I've said it a million times, and we have. I mean, Lord knows I never thought I'd see Auburn basketball where it's at, and Alabama is at another level too. But my Lord, I mean, football is just so daggum king everywhere.
We can all pretend otherwise. We would kick basketball into the ocean if it meant that our team had a shot at the playoffs. I don't like saying it. I'm a basketball guy, and by God, there'll be Auburn people saying they don't. I'm just telling you, if you look at any Auburn message board, guess what's dominating?
If you took a poll, I mean, and again, I guess that's the rank and file. I mean, when you brought that stat up about Kansas a few years ago,
yeah,
that blew my mind. I said, well, that just tells me everything I need to know right there. When their football team makes more money than and carries their basketball program, that's mind blowing.
What if we, instead of a bowl game, what if we incorporated the bowls? And I wonder if we did like a different, like an NIT. Would that make it any better? I'm spitballing here.
Well, Patrick just said why the bowl games are unwatchable. All these guys
that idea, Luke.
Talking about an NIT tournament
for college football.
And you get paid as you advance, you get paid. But the only thing I keep thinking about that is, can you imagine like what's his name, Bert Auburn for Texas, that missed 2 field goals at the end? And let's say Texas had lost like they probably should have because of non-targeting. Can you imagine the complete throttling he would have taken in the locker room? You cost me $45.
I guess he would have done the same thing the Alabama player did to Cade Foster and took a crap in his cleat.
Yeah,
after the kick 6 game.
All right, I will tell you what. I don't know if they've ever caught that guy, but if they do, I'm going to send him some flowers.
Here we go.
He deserved every one of them little nuggets.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Saturday Sports Countdown, presented by JR Sports Bar and Grill and Sunshine Heating and Air. A couple segments left. in today's show. We are going to talk about college basketball right now, as Auburn and Alabama both open up SEC play. Both are top 5 teams. Auburn's ranked number 2. Alabama's ranked number 5. They both open up at home. Alabama opens up with a 13-0 Oklahoma team, and Missouri is 11-1, I believe, coming into to Neville Arena today, and they just beat Kansas a few weeks ago. I mean, there's no rest for the weary here in this league. Every single time you go on the floor, you're gonna have to play well. You better defend home court, and you better get your wins on the road when you can get them. Randy, I'll start with you. Glad to see SEC plays here.
Yeah, looking forward to seeing how Auburn matches up with a really physical team for Missouri. You know, if you can beat Kansas, you got to be good down in the post. And the difference that I've seen with Auburn this year, maybe with some other SEC schools, and we'll see how it plays out, is Auburn's strength is in the post, not only shooting the ball from the perimeter, but Auburn can have a bad night shooting and still win basketball games. And, 5-6 years ago, that wasn't the case. Austin Wiley was not going to carry us to a championship with play down in the post, Brett. So this Auburn team can do it both ways. Alabama, if I look at this Alabama team and I see where their strengths are, they're still where they've been with Nate Oates, and Nelson's rugged enough to be able to defend down in the post, but I think Auburn would have to expose them down in the post. So I think Missouri's a really good matchup for Auburn in the first game to see really where we stand. And I'm sure, you can say all that you want about out of conference scheduling and the strength of schedule that Auburn and Alabama's played this year, but there's a whole new rejuvenation when it comes into conference play. And these players and all of us know how good the SEC is going to be this year. So you said a mouthful, you better win at home.
How about these stats? This is from an ESPN article today. And I'm just going to throw some numbers out at you. 88.9, that's the SEC's overall winning percentage entering conference play. It's by far the best record of any conference in the country. It's by far the best winning percentage in the league's history. 12, that's the number of SEC teams currently in Lunardi's bracketology. The record for any conference is 11. 21, that's the number of wins the SEC has against AP-ranked teams in non-conference play, the most ever by a conference prior to postseason play, according to ESPN research. Let's see, plus 20.12. That's the league's current rating at KenPom, the best in the country by some distance. In fact, it's the highest since the ACC finished at plus 20.21 in 2004. For reference, a team with a plus 20.12 net rating would be in the top 30 nationally in his rankings. There are 4 SEC teams in the top 10 at KenPom, 7 in the top 25, and 11 in the top 40. 15. That's how many SEC teams are ranked in the top 75 of the net. There are only 16 teams in the league, by the way. 5. That's how many teams are ranked in the top 10 of this week's AP poll.
So the stats and the matrix and all of the charts and everything we've seen leading up to conference play, or just all that stuff you just read off, Luke's been unbelievable. And listen to these games today, guys. Florida goes to Kentucky. Florida's number 6 in the country. Kentucky's number 10. That game's at 10 o'clock on ESPN. You've got Arkansas going to Tennessee at noon today. That's again a 23 ranked Arkansas team with John Calipari going to the number 1 team in the country in Tennessee. You've got South Carolina, Luke, like you said, who's the worst team in the league at 10-3, going to Mississippi State, who's ranked 17th. Then you got Oklahoma and Alabama. That's a 12-5 matchup. And you got Auburn opening up with a Missouri team that's 11-2 and's got 2 really good quality wins on their schedule already. And then you got Texas A&M tonight at 7 o'clock. It's got a rival matchup. This is the first dadgum game of the season, SEC season for all these teams. Unbelievable.
Well, when you've got as many good teams as you have, Brett, you can make storylines up like you just said. Now, if not all of them are as good as they are this year, then you may say Florida going on the road to Kentucky is going to be an easy win for Kentucky, but Florida's back in this thing. And
absolutely.
The beauty for us is that Auburn and Alabama sitting there as a top 5 team, and that's not just a one-off year. Luke's been saying it for 3 or 4 years. Randy, stop talking about pinching yourself and where this state's come in basketball. Just quit. Don't say it anymore. We're here. We've been here for a while. And we have been at the top of the SEC play, along with, say, Kentucky and Tennessee for the last decade. And it is a mouthful, but I don't think we're going anywhere. And Alabama last year was proof positive that I don't think this conference is going anywhere. I thought Alabama would take a tremendous step back last year. I'll be honest. Brandon Miller leaving, that great squad that they had a few years ago, and then last year they go to the Final Four. So Auburn, you may say, Brett, take advantage of it this year. All these seniors, and you're not going to be as well. Who knows, man? I mean, the way that our two schools here in this state are branding basketball now, you're going to go out on the transfer portal and be able to recruit 2 or 3 premier guys. So
No, I agree with that part. I'm just saying this particular year with 10 seniors and this much veteran leadership, it's so rare.
oh, it's
And
a special team. It's
This,
the best team we've ever had.
I don't think
I'm
we'll
not,
ever. Yeah,
I'm
I
not
don't think we'll
questioning
see
that.
And as to Randy's point, because they just changed that JUCO rule, you may get Chad Baker, Mazzara, and one of those
Denver
other
Jones.
dudes back.
Denver Jones.
Yeah.
Yep.
May get them back because they'll make more money playing at Auburn than they would anywhere else. They're more valued at Auburn than they are in the NBA. And I mean,
that's
again,
the same
no shame
reason
about
Mark
it
Sears.
all.
What's the same reason you said Mark Sears came back to Alabama?
Correct.
You know,
100%.
got more money, more appreciated there.
Janai too, Brett.
Oh, for sure, 1,000%.
They're the same two guys. I mean, Mark Sears, I thought, was the best point guard in college basketball last year. You may say he's taken a semi-step back, but there's some more pieces around him that make that transition a little bit difficult this year for him. And Janai's the best post player back from last year once those guys went on to the NBA. So we're lucky that you have the NIL, because if you didn't have the NIL, we wouldn't have the benefit of having those two guys on our squad this year, for sure.
And that's the give and take of it. You know,
Yep.
That's the give and take.
Our Stu said he's got several comments on here. He said, obviously a great day for SEC hoops, but when's Alabama's new arena going to open up? Are there plans for that?
I mean, they've got plans, but my understanding is they're like, I mean, all this sort of hit at the same time as the NIL stuff, and they're like, if we got somebody who wants to donate a couple $1 million, we want it to go into NIL. Nobody cares where you play anymore. You can play out there.
That's why I'm glad Auburn got Auburn Arena built when they did. I mean, they couldn't ask for better.
At the time, it seemed dumb, right? At the time, it did.
Well, especially when you had Tony Barbee. Yeah, it was real dumb to open up a facility and have Tony Barbee coaching. Yeah, that absolutely was stupid.
But what Skip just said, I know we're up against break, but Bruce Pearl has said the exact same thing over and over again.
He has.
If the money comes in, spend it on NIL, not facilities.
That's where we are now. All right, up against the last break of the show. Stay tuned. One final segment right after this.
Hey, I got to take off.
All right, buddy.
Thank
you, Luke.
See you, buddy.
Right. See you guys. Bye.
Yep. Crazy. Glad we got it built when we got it built.
Yeah, it's nice.
Well, it's what we need. And now it's a tough ticket. Are you going to the game today?
I don't think so.
Okay. It's just so daggum easy to sit at home and watch some of these games.
I really hadn't thought about I mean, I don't know what all I'm doing today, to be honest. When I go home, my wife will let me know.
She'll tell you exactly what you need to be doing.
Yeah.
For sure, 100%.
It's a wild start to a year, buddy. I am spinning, my head spinning all over the map. Got that new truck coming in next week, Brett.
That's going to be awesome. That 90-footer?
Yeah.
That's going to be awesome.
Mm-hmm.
You going to go up in it with me?
Nope.
Man, you go up in it to the top?
There's no chance.
I'll go up in it if you'll go up with me.
I'm not going up. You're more than welcome to. I'll get a picture of you from the ground. Isn't it funny? It's funny to think that part of my living's made by people going way up in the air.
That don't mean you got to do it. Don't mean you have to do it.
Oh, man.
Justin said you're still in line mentally at Dollywood.
Oh, gosh. I was thinking about you. Where were we, Brett? I was somewhere last week where the crowd was crazy. I was thinking, boy, man. Brett would, I know where we were. We're getting on the train. Dollywood.
Oh, yeah.
And so you have the barrier, and then, packed in there.
Just like sardines.
I said, Brett Pritchard would be
mad.
About like me up in a 90-foot lift.
Oh,
just
claustrophobic, man. Just about to elbow everybody in the temple. Just get away from me, get off me, don't be around me. How about give everybody a reason not to stand near me?
Oh, me.
Yeah, that stuff gets ridiculous, man. I think our Stu said tickets for today's game. These are probably standing room tickets, $195.
That's probably standing room. You can't get it. You can't
No,
get
you can't get
any
a seat.
others.
Nah. I had Tennessee game tickets right now, $3,000 to $4,000 in the lower bowl. That is unbelievable. Unbelievable. I didn't ever think we'd ever see anything near that.
Nope.
Golly. All right, so we got about
Couple of minutes.
no, we got about 40 seconds. So
Oh, I mean, when we come back,
oh yeah. We'll get out.
we don't have long, do we?
No, we'll get out at 8:57. So yeah, we'll have about 5 minutes. Been a good crowd on here today. Appreciate all the
Good.
comments, everybody. Been a bunch of them.
Good.
Tons of comments. We really appreciate it.
Subscribe to our YouTube page if you haven't already. Really helps us. Trying to increase that number. You may look at that number for us and go, why do y'all only have, so many? But we haven't really tried.
We just started.
I mean,
All right,
we just started a few months back.
All right, welcome back, everyone, to the Saturday Sports Countdown presented by JR Sports Bar and Grill and Sunshine Heating and Air. I want to send out a shout out to Russ back in the studio. Since we've moved to this format, he still shows up and produces this for us on TV and radio, and we couldn't do the show without him. Back there, I kind of handle the production side here on the online stream. So it's worked out well for us, Randy, moving to this format, especially for Luke in Birmingham. And allows us to bring you this show. And most of the time, all three of us will be able to be on here and be able to give us, give our thoughts to everybody. And it's just a great format for people that are all over the place right now is all I can tell you.
Well, I'm going to prod Brett to change out that orange and blue color in the background of the Sports Blitz program to maybe throw a little red in there somewhere.
These are Florida. These are Florida colors, by the way.
So we don't look so Auburn oriented. But for those of you that are just finding us through our Auburn Blitz programming, we've had Sports Blitz programming for 20 plus years. And the thought process around that is Brett and I like to do shows together no matter what. But add an Alabama element into it a few times a week for a couple of hours. And Luke Robinson's been with us for a majority of that time, and real proud of Luke. Luke has grown by leaps and bounds with his podcast numbers with Locked On Bama, and so thrilled that we can get him back on Saturday and have a little back and forth. I like to prod him. He likes to prod me back. He's really good at it.
We all like to do that.
So I had a feeling that I could get him going this morning, and he came back at me 4 or 5 different times as it just set back in the back of his mind that I called Alabama out for losing 24-3.
And he didn't really, and he said he didn't really try to clamor for Alabama to get in. Okay, I didn't want to go down that path. So I just let him do it. So
he made my day today. So
John said he thinks I went in the portal. John, I hadn't been in. I'm not in the portal, John. I'm still right here. So
we don't have any leverage right now, John.
I have no reason to go in the portal. Nobody wants me. Hey, John, you just getting up, man? I mean, he said he's joining the fun late. You just waking up, joining us here. We're about over. So you've been laying in the bed. It was cold this morning. So just to kind of close out the show, we've got about 3 minutes. Again, talking about our program and podcast every single morning, Monday through Friday, the Auburn Blitz podcast. Randy and I do that. We really love it, enjoy it. We're building our YouTube channel. Like you said, I've got that on across the screen for everybody to see. Go out there and find us, our Auburn Blitz channel, and subscribe. Didn't cost anything, and you'll get alerts every time we're on. And Patrick said, any updates on the BRHS coaching search? We'll have some updates hopefully in a couple of weeks. I know they're going to be going through the interview process. They want to have somebody in place by the start of February. Over the holidays, it kind of made it tough, with people being able to work their schedule. So I know they're going to be busy the next couple of weeks. And I would expect to have a coach named, Randy, by the first part of February.
Yeah, I think that it's important for the leadership that's in place to decide on who they want to take this program, hopefully to the next level as we head on. You know, I don't think we've had a chance on this show to say how much I thought about Smitty Grider while he was there, Brett. I thought he did a tremendous job. I know that
He did.
both parties came together at the end of this thing and said that maybe it's time to split. Don't know the exacts on both sides, but did want to take the chance to say that we really did enjoy working with Smitty, and
Absolutely.
he's a tremendous football coach. So hopefully he lands on his feet somewhere and it works out. I bet it will, because buddy, he knows his football, and he put a winning product out there for us. So the people that are in place, namely the superintendent and principal and the athletic director, they'll go out and I've got a lot of confidence in those three and anybody else that they put on that committee to make the right choice. And it's going to be a fun time to be a Benjamin Russell fan with the new school starting up, Brett. Tip my hat to you and so many that are on the Board of Education for getting that thing to the finish line finally. So if there's ever a time to sell,
Lord, we talked about it for a long time, didn't we? Yeah, we talked about it.
Coach Brooks, I tell you this all the time. There were drafts on his desk when I was in school to revamp the current high school in the current location that it's in. And that was in 95. So there were drawings 30 years ago for what is finally coming to fruition now. And they were needed 30 years ago.
Absolutely.
A lot of the facilities that we were dealing with back then in comparison to even what we see now. So it's an arms race, you like it or not. It's kind of like back to my quarterback mentioned to you, Brett. You can either spend the money or you don't, and you get what you deserve when you don't.
Randy, hang on for a couple minutes. We got to go out on TV and radio. Again, want to thank all of our TV, radio viewers and listeners. We'll be back with you next week for more of the Saturday Sports Countdown. We can stay on a couple minutes and answer a couple of these questions, let you finish what you said. So we still got a bunch of people watching.
I just, it is an arms race, and people are more transient than they ever were. My family's a prime example, Brett. My wife's working in a bordering community.
And you probably never envisioned that 10 years ago.
No, I would have never even dreamed of it. And, I love Alex City. I'll forever love Alexander City. And, but people move and transition around way more than they did 30 years ago.
Things dictate that too.
Yeah, but because you don't have the opportunities in some of our communities that you once did. Let's just be honest. Yeah, everybody wants to say that economic development's important, but there's, how many counties in the state of Alabama are not living in poverty, which means a majority of the
all but two.
4.
I thought there were 2 that were
4 counties in the state of Alabama are not 50+% poverty level.
Shelby, Lee, Baldwin, and Madison.
Those 4. The other 63 are in poverty. And I say this about Alex City all the time when people talk to us about it. The perception's that lake outside. You and I were in a meeting last week where the perception is that lake. But those of us that grew up in it, the perception when you and I were growing up was we were an amazing mill town.
Right.
Not a kind of mill town. We were one of the best mill towns in the South. And with a vibrant white collar, blue collar position
in the country.
So, when NAFTA went through and they killed the textile market, and now we're trying to fight back to producing some things here in the country the way that we did. Maybe some things change moving forward. My wife actually asked me that a few weeks ago because I'm still semi in the textile business, buying wholesale apparel and producing that way, but nowhere near where we once were. My family's been in this textile with my dad for 50+ years. So I've seen it and I've witnessed the change that's going on. But back to my point, people going to find the program they want to be involved in. Absolutely. They want to be in a community that's spending money and trying to upgrade what they're doing. And it's proof positive to what's going on in Thompson, Alabama with Alabaster.
Right.
Alabaster's a prime example of coming from nowhere to somewhere really, really fast by showing where the importance is for your community. And so
no doubt.
It's a big day. Big day.
All right, a couple comments and then we'll get out. John said, are there any other coaching changes expected at Alabama? I know they fired a defensive assistant. There may be a couple more. Anytime you have a disappointing season. We know crap rolls downhill, and the head coach is going to get rid of some guys in some areas they think they need to make some improvements. So we'll just follow that as it comes. Brad said, is maintaining a grade point average still viable in the NIL?
Brett
era?
says it all the time. Never gets brought up.
Never even hear about it anymore.
Nope.
Does Auburn cover the 18.5 today? R. Stu says.
Oh, I don't know, man. I think Missouri's a lot better than we give them credit for.
Yeah, it's going to be that's a tough line. I know it's at I know it's in Neville Arena, but that's a tough opening game there for Auburn at home. R. Stu says, I grew up in Alabaster in the 90s. I don't even recognize it when I go down there. Man, when I started recruiting at CAC and went to Thompson High School, and they were the doormat for everybody in almost every sport, I went, man, this school right here. And they made a decision to change their mentality and want to win at every single thing that they did, and it shows right now. Beautiful facility.
And back to my transient. You can like, dislike, get upset, be a high school sports fan, and wonder why these programs have so many players that transition from one program to the next. It's easy.
It is.
You know, make a legitimate move. Get an apartment, get a house, legitimate move. I mean, you can do it a lot of different ways, and get your kid involved with the coaching staff and the administration that you want to be involved in. Trust me, if I was living over in the Birmingham market and knowing what I know, and I had a really good athlete, I'd want Mark Freeman raising him. Would you, Brett?
No,
You've been bragging on Mark Freeman for 20 plus years. I remember the first time you met him, you said, "Man, I like him." And that's been a very long time.
He's got his priorities in order, man.
So
and Randy, you and I saw him at a press conference kind of go out and challenge. We saw it in person at the Kickoff Classic a few years ago because all the rumblings about people moving in and stuff, and he pretty much got up there and said, "Anybody want to take a shot at me? Go ahead.
Yep.
Hey, come at me. If you think we're doing something illegal, say it. Bring it out. Don't talk about it on Twitter." He said that exact thing, didn't he? He said, "Don't talk about it on Twitter. Come, let's talk about it in person." And I think what John just said. He said, "I've always liked Alex City, spending most of his life in Montgomery and living the last 10 years in Morris, Alabama. He's always loved Alex City. Alex City has always had that vibe about it. And anybody that's ever come here and visited says the same exact thing. And then now you got leadership and you got people that's been in place that want to continue to see this community grow. And we've seen it grow tremendously."
Yeah, it's growth. But I think you need like a beacon sitting out there. You may lose me here.
Yeah, I think I lost you. Yeah, I think he just went out. But if we get Randy back, we do. Again, John said our college NIL athletes still going to class. Who knows, John? I think it's a problem. I definitely think it's a problem, and I don't know that I'm worried about that aspect of what we're teaching young people. It's all about the money grab right now. But when this era of their life is over, what are they going to get? And how are they going to be able to react? And are they going to be able to maintain the lifestyle they have now? Because a lot of them aren't going to go pro. So I think we're missing the boat on a lot of these kids, and we're setting them up for failure down the line by placing all the emphasis on just NIL and stuff right now. So, all right, guys, that's going to end the show today. We appreciate it. We'll be back with you on Monday for the Auburn Blitz podcast. Again, reminder to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We can't thank all of you enough for what you do and adding to the program with your comments and stuff. So we'll be back with you on Monday. Hope everybody has a great weekend, everybody.